power. Economic issues are huge, as is the question of abortion access. In Pennsylvania, U.S. Senate candidates Mehmet Oz and John Fetterman made their final pitches to voters yesterday. NPR's Jeff Brady reports the race is among those that will determine if Democrats maintain their majority in the Senate.
Celebrity Dr. Mehmet Oz packed a diner with supporters and talked about the economy and crime.
I believe we can have safe city streets and communities. I believe that we can have a secure border but allow legal immigration like my parents enjoy, so we can get the people we want in our country working as hard as we do to make everything work better here.
In front of a union hall, John Fetterman said he supports raising the minimum wage and getting rid of the filibuster.
I want to protect marriage equality as well, too.
Yes.
And also the opportunity to codify Roe v. Wade.
Whoever is elected will replace retiring Republican Senator Pat Toomey. Jeff Brady, NPR News, Pittsburgh.
It's the last day for Arizona voters to decide between incumbent Democratic Senator Mark Kelly and GOP challenger Blake Masters. In the days leading up to the election, the pair ramped up their campaign events. NPR's Jimena Bustillo has more from Phoenix.
On Monday, Kelly stressed his bipartisan efforts and support of bills that benefit service members at a press conference featuring former Senator John McCain's son, Jack McCain. Later in the day, challenger Blake Masters was met by cheering crowds as a part of a tour alongside other statewide GOP candidates. He emphasized tackling inflation and rising prices. But both need to win over independent and moderate candidates, even in the historically Republican state. This Arizona race is one of the toss-up battles that could determine control of the Senate next year. The Senate is currently split 50-50, with both parties looking to gain greater margins. Jimena Bustillo, NPR News, Phoenix.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has given her first interview since the attack on her husband. She acknowledged that it may affect her future in Congress. NPR's Giles Snyder reports.
Speaker Pelosi sat down with CNN and she was emotional, saying she was close to tears as she recalled how she learned of the attack. She said the hard part is knowing her husband Paul was not the target, but that he's the one paying the price. Pelosi declined to talk about her future in Congress, but acknowledged that the attack will have an effect on her decision.
NPR's Giles Snyder. Many parts of Florida have yet to recover from Hurricane Ian, but another hurricane is bearing down on the state. Nicole has strengthened to a tropical storm as it churns toward the northwestern Bahamas and Florida's Atlantic coastline. The Dow up 353. This is NPR News in Washington.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro in Brookline today, and it is Election Day across the country. People here in Massachusetts have been making their way to the polls since they opened at 7 a.m. And not just any people, too. The candidates were up and out early. GBH News caught up with Republican candidate for Governor Jeff Deal in his hometown of Whitman. We caught up with him right after he left his voting precinct.
I used to be a Democrat 14 years ago. I switched because I just felt like that party wasn't necessarily representing the working class folks. My mom was in the union 40 years. I was serving on the finance committee right here in the town of Whitman, and we had a state representative who wasn't necessarily helping our schools out. He was a Democrat, so I ended up running against him, winning, going up to Beacon Hill. It's never been a long-term plan to try to change the party. Just make sure it's representing the people who actually make the state great.
Polls close at 8 this evening, and just a program note that GBH has live updates for the state's general elections all day today. Our reporters have fanned out across Massachusetts. We are on the streets, we're at the polls and the watch parties, and for all the latest election news and coverage, you can go to gbhnews.org. And do keep an ear out for the candidates today, as each and every one has been invited to check in with Jim and Marjorie on Boston Public Radio, which is live today at the Boston Public Library. It is Tuesday after all. No rest for the Celtics, coming off a win over the Grizzlies in Memphis last night. Gang Green are back in the Garden tonight hosting the Pistons, and we are in for a beautiful fall day today. Great day to get out and vote. No excuse not to. Sunny low 50s today. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Paramount Network. Yellowstone returns with its Season 5 premiere, showcasing that power has a price. Starring Kevin Costner, Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern on Paramount Network. This is NPR.
Eastern Rowdy, I am Marjorie Yeek, and you're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 94.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live as we do every Tuesday and every Friday from the Boston Public Library in Copley Square. And we are streaming on youtube.com/GBH News. We're going to be here not on Friday this week, but on Thursday.
That is all correct.
That is
Mark.
correct.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Nice to see you. So it is election day in Massachusetts and around the country. Actually, to be more precise, I guess it's the final day to vote here and around the country. We're starting the show today with what's been a BPR election day tradition for years, checking in with the major party candidates for statewide office. So a little bit later, we'll open the phone and text lines for you to share what's on your mind this election day, to hear how you voted, what you're doing tonight to stay sane, hoping democracy actually survives the midterms. We're going to start with a Democratic candidate for Attorney General, former president of the Boston City Council, Andrea Campbell. Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you. Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Hey,
Pleasure.
Hello, Andrea Campbell. So tell us, what are you doing today? What's your plan?
Went out to vote this morning with my husband and my oldest son, Alexander, before we brought him to school. And then I will be going to different polling locations, encouraging folks to vote and reminding them it's critical to get out, not just in the Attorney General race, but all of the races up and down the ballot.
Does Alexander know what Mom's doing? Is he with the program yet or what, Andrea?
He has a sense, he's in kindergarten, but they've been talking about civic engagement ever since they got into the month of November. And
Great.
So he gets it and was very excited to be a part of it this morning.
Did you tell us a month or two ago, I know I heard it somewhere, that until a reporter said it to you, it hadn't occurred to you that should you win, you'd be the first black woman statewide office holder? That you said that. Is that not true?
That is true. I didn't run to be the first. I was running to really talk about all the ways the Attorney General's office could help residents with daily struggles and concerns they have. And a reporter asked one of my team members, would this be not just a black woman, but a woman of color has ever won a statewide office? And to our shock, yes. And so it's an historic day for so many races. And of course, it means a great deal to me. I get the magnitude of that. And I carry my candidacy with a sense of humility because of it.
We like to think it all began back here on Boston Public Radio, Andrea Campbell, when you used to visit us when you were on the city council.
You guys were amazing. You gave me let me tell you, you both gave me incredible opportunity to come on once a month to talk about the work of the council. And now when I go outside of Boston, outside of 495, so many folks said, I remember you from Jim and Marjorie. Some still think I come on regularly. I had to remind them I don't.
Well, let me tell you, we would have had you on more often if you had accused some of your opponents of being Protestants in Northern Ireland. And in any case, we're not going to get into that today.
So give people your closing argument, Andrea Campbell, for running for Attorney General.
One, get out to vote. The AG's office can help when it comes to mental health, housing affordability, everything having to do with the Supreme Court and more. And I've stressed a very painful story as a way to relate to the struggles of so many residents in this Commonwealth, but also really put out incredible policy to help folks and to make sure the office continues to be the people's lawyer representing the people's law firm. I will always be accountable to the people, but for that to happen, I need folks to get out and vote. AndreaCampbell.org. We put a lot of information on our website. Please get out and vote. Tell your neighbors, your family, and your colleagues, and I hope to earn the vote of residents all across Massachusetts today.
Andrea Campbell, good luck. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
Andrea Campbell, Democratic nominee for Attorney General. The Republican nominee, Jay McMahon, will join us a little bit later in the next few minutes. One of the statistics, Andrea was so upbeat. I hate to do our usual downbeat thing. I was listening to NPR this morning. 60% of American voters today will have an opportunity to vote for an election denier, statewide office holding election denier, including in Massachusetts, by the way. Does that sink in with you? I mean, I know we talk about it all the time, but it's sort of, we almost gloss over it to a degree. Is that amazing to you?
Well, I mean, I think that's what the president was talking about, although he's been criticized for not talking more about the economy and economics in general.
I mean, last Wednesday's closing speech.
Yes, when he was talking about democracy being in jeopardy. And I think a better way maybe to say it was that if a lot of these election deniers win, then in 2024, your vote may not count in all sorts of parts of the United States, no matter how you vote.
Well, also, by the way, if they win, they're not going to do election denying. They're only going to do election denying if they lose. By the way, I assume most of you know this, but for those of you listening in Rhode Island or Massachusetts, polls are open till 8. Plenty of time to get there. Polls close at 7 o'clock in New Hampshire. Please don't miss an opportunity to cast your vote in what is I know we say this all the time, and we mean it every time, is a really important election. By the way, the next candidate to join us in a couple of minutes will be the Democratic candidate for governor of Massachusetts, Maura Healey. So how much trepidation are you do you feel in your bones?
Well, I was saying this before, and we can ask John King later when he comes on. I mean, I think the post-Trump years have been either, whether you're with the former president or you are not with the former president, they've been much more stressful. I think in general, politics that used to be kind of back burner for a lot of people was something that they paid attention to, like a few weeks before the election, has become sort of an everyday kind of thing. We joked before about how Thanksgiving dinners have not been the same since Donald Trump was elected president, because you may have some people in your family who are, or your in-laws or something, who have different political views than you did. That wasn't a big deal.
You remember the great SNL routine?
I do.
Trump was, for those who don't have much of a memory, which is usually me, by the way, I think it was the first year. Was it the first year Trump was in office? And SNL did a skit about all the conflict, internal conflict in your family. And every time people started talking about politics or Trump, they all stood up and sang some Adele song. I can't remember what the Adele song was.
To bring them all back together for about 30 seconds. So I think there's much more. It seems like you can't escape from politics. A friend of mine, I rearranged something this afternoon, Jim, because I'm going to do your TV show, and she said to me,
Marjorie will be on my show.
That's right.
That's correct. Talking
I know.
politics.
This is the first time I've been on in like 9 years. I don't know why that is, but in any case, I'm going to make. I made the cut tonight.
The Adele song was Hello. Thank you, Jamie. I forgot. Thanks.
But anyway, she said to me, well, she said, Marjorie, I'm not going to watch you. I just want you to know I can't take any more of this election stuff. I'm not even watching anything today. And I think there's a lot of people who don't do what we do that just say, enough already. I'm going to go vote, and that's it. I don't want to think about it. They're going to go maybe watch Jenny Slate do a stand-up comedy tonight, where she's going to be with us a little later in the show. That they just are overwhelmed. They don't want to.
But I don't quite get that, because the reality is, let's assume you ignore tonight to stay sane. It isn't like the winners are not going to be the winners tomorrow and the next day and the next day. What happens?
It's because I don't think we were as hostile toward each other as we are now.
That part is true.
There's this kind of, the other side is not just wrong, they're evil, and I think that's what happens. So I think people are much more upset. And by the way, did you mention Jeff Deal was supposed to come today, but he's not coming. He canceled this morning. We're not sure why. He's usually with us on election day, and we'd love to have him join us.
Not usually. Every single state, whenever he's run for statewide office, he's been here, and he was with us a couple of weeks ago, months or so ago. We expected him to be, but he canceled the last minute. And by the way, Jeff Deal, if you're listening or your campaign is listening, you're welcome to call us anytime between now and 2 o'clock. He's obviously the Republican candidate for governor in Massachusetts.
We have a lot of people who are reporting that they went out to vote, and they found considerable numbers of people out there voting this morning too. So you voted already.
I voted already. Marjorie, we're crossing our fingers. We'll remember. This is election day.
Yeah, I remember. One year I made a mistake, but not this year.
One year she not only went on the wrong day, she went to the polling location that was not hers. Other than that, she really nailed it. Oh, having said that, we're now joined by the Democratic nominee for governor. That would be Attorney General Maura Healey. Attorney General, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Jim and Marjorie.
Yeah, thank you.
Happy Election Day.
Happy Election Day to you, too. Thank you very much for joining us, and love the picture of you in the Globe playing basketball at Harvard University.
With a spike haircut.
Yeah, that was a great story.
So the days of perms.
Yeah, exactly. So what are you doing today, Attorney General?
Out and about, heading out to a couple polling locations shortly, and then I'll be over in East Boston, and we're continuing to work hard on the phones and on the dialer and on the doors. And I'm just grateful to all of our volunteers and to our campaign team who's been working really, really hard for weeks and months. The energy's been great out there. I mean, we're across the state over the weekend, Springfield, Worcester. Kim was up in Pittsfield, and, I spent a lot of time in Boston, and we saw huge turnouts. This was our biggest weekend of folks making calls and knocking doors. So I think people know what's at stake in this election, and I'm just excited it's Election Day.
Did you vote yet today?
I did.
How did it feel to vote for yourself? I'm serious, for governor.
Great. I liked voting for myself as Attorney General, and I liked voting for myself as Governor.
You know, Maura Healey, I have to say, I haven't monitored everything you said on the campaign trail, but sort of analogous to what I said to Andrea Campbell a few minutes ago, if you end up winning this thing tonight, you know this, you're the first woman elected governor. Jane Swift ascended, was not elected, obviously, when Paul Cellucci left to be the ambassador to Canada. You'd be the first openly gay woman to be a governor in the United States. Do you think about that on a day like today?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm proud that I have an opportunity to be in a position where hopefully, whether it's a young girl or a young person in our LGBTQ community can look up and say, hey, you know what, that's possible. Someday I can be, whether it's governor of Massachusetts or attorney general or anything else. You know, the point is why, to me, it's so important why representation matters, in part because you're going to get better laws and policies when we really have people in place at the table making those decisions, part of that decision-making process. And also, Jim, seeing is believing, and that really, really matters. And so I'm really happy for what this historic ticket represents for Massachusetts. Not only is it important that we not allow Trumpism here in Massachusetts, that we have people in office who will stand for reproductive justice and freedom, and also we have the opportunity to elect a ticket of incredibly experienced, competent women who are here for the right reasons and focused on delivering results for people across the state.
You know, Attorney General Healey, in different parts of the country, Florida comes to mind immediately, there's a lot of anti-gay efforts from legislatures making rules, don't say gay bill, that kind of stuff, Ron DeSantis. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it does not seem at all that being gay has been like an issue in Massachusetts. Maybe it was somewhere that you went to speak in some group or something, but I certainly haven't seen it or read about it. Did I miss something? I mean, it seems like we have moved on here in Massachusetts to a much more open attitude.
Well, I'll say this. I am grateful for so many who have gone before me who made this possible. You know, people who were afraid to live their lives openly and be who they are authentically with friends and neighbors, their family members in the workplace. And, you know, I'm the beneficiary of that. And today I just want to give it up to all the folks from our LGBTQ community who went through an awful lot to make possible both my election as Attorney General and what I hope to be my election as your next governor. It's not to say that we don't live with discrimination and bias out there. We've seen a rise of white supremacy, a rise of attacks on our trans community, a rise of all sorts of discrimination and you know, some ugly stuff across this country, including here in Massachusetts. But you can be sure that as governor, I will be the first to stand up for civil rights, look after those who are vulnerable, and make sure that we're really clear that we are a state and a commonwealth that is about equality, that is about freedom, that is about respecting the dignity and worth of every person, regardless of their gender identity, their sexual identity, their race, their religion, and the zip code where they're from. It's as simple as that. So, you know, it's both the case that we have worked hard here in Massachusetts to make sure that certain protections are in place, and we also need to make sure we work hard every day to keep those in place and to make life as good as it can be for people across the state, especially in the face of some of what we're seeing in other states, where people are attacking gay people, attacking a woman's right to make a decision for herself with regard to abortion, taking us backwards on so many fronts. That's not who we are in Massachusetts. And that's why I feel so good about today, because I think the voters understand that, Marjorie. I think they understand the context of the time and how important it is that we have a governor and lieutenant governor and attorney general and candidates, you know, up and down the ballot who are going to stand for those values.
Hey, before you go, in that Stan Grossfeld article with that picture we were talking about, we were reading how many threes you made in a game against Brown. Do you know that was within 2 of the NCAA record for threes in a game? You aware of that? Oops. Well, so much for that. Maura Healey is gone.
We made a mistake. It was our fault. We dropped her by mistake.
We did?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
But it was
nothing like hanging up on the front runner in the governor's race. In any case, Maura Healey, we wish you luck. And but if she's listening, apologies. We didn't get to say goodbye. Our fault on our end. In any case, we will be joined in a couple of minutes. And we mention again, if you just tuned in, Jeff Deal was invited, the Republican nominee. He accepted. And for some reason this morning he said he didn't have time for us. Joining us now is the Republican nominee for Attorney General, Jay McMahon. Jay, thanks so much for calling in.
Hey, Jim, good to be with you guys.
Thank you very much for joining us, Jay McMahon. So tell us, what are you up to today? What's your election day strategy, Jay? Where are you going?
Okay, so I am going all over the place. I was in Bourne this morning. I'm heading up to Plymouth County, going to Plymouth, and then going to Kingston. I'm going to make my way all the way up to Boston and all the way around some of the suburbs, and I'm going to wind up in Saugus. They got an event for me there. And then in the end, I'm going to be at the Boston Harbor Hotel.
Oh, nice choice.
Hey, Jay McMahon, I've said a million times on the air, I think I've said to you too, I really admire people who decide to put themselves out and run for office, even in a blue state like this. You've run for Attorney General a couple of times. What drives you?
Well, I'll tell you what, Jim, you know, the opioid crisis really is the thing that's in the bottom of my heart. You know, I lost my son to opiates.
Do know.
And because of that, and I go to Mass and Cass and I see people, and Jim, I look at them, I look in their eyes, they got a look of hopelessness, and I ask most of them, the ones that I can have a real fluid conversation, most of them tell me their story about how they got there. All of them, it's on drugs, and all of them trying to go through certain rehabilitation programs and they just don't get the job done. But I do know from talking to opiate rehabilitative physicians, the ones that run the private pay programs, that they are very successful. And I want to do something with respect to the private pay programs, bring the government ones up to their standards, and maybe we can get some results and start giving people some of their lives back.
So, Jay McMahon, give us your closing argument. Why should people who have yet to vote cast their ballot for you today?
Because I am standing for public safety and law and order. My opponent is soft on crime. I am not. I'm going to be enforcing the laws without bringing a political agenda to this office. It's primarily a law enforcement office, and you would think that they would back the blue. I do back the blue. My opponent is awful iffy on that, and she's soft on crime. And I'll tell you what, with a crime wave that we have now, with Boston beginning to look like Chicago, we need to be tough on crime. She doesn't have an opiate plan. I do. I have a 3-point plan that's on my website. Anybody wants to go see it, it's attorneyjmcmahon.com, or they can go to my Facebook page at Attorney J. McMahon. If they have an issue, even now, they can email us. We're still answering emails today. info@attorneyjmcmahon.com.
Hey, Jay, we really appreciate your time today. Good luck. Jay McMahon, Republican for Attorney General. Now joining us on the phone is the incumbent Democrat running for Secretary of State. That'd be Secretary of State Bill Galvin. Secretary, welcome to the show. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Well, Secretary Galvin, thank you very much for joining us. So before we get to what you're doing today, because you are in charge of the election today, I guess you're going to do some of that.
Right.
But tell us what you're seeing so far as turnout. Tell us.
Well, I mean, as you know, I projected what I regard as something of a disappointing 2.2 million. And I'm still thinking that's generally correct. As I said yesterday, I hope I'm wrong. There is a trickle. It could go up a tick. The problem with coming up with an exact projection is we did not have vote by mail 8 years ago. And even 4 years ago in 2018, we only had early voting. We didn't have to the same extent vote by mail. So we have had 1 million people already vote by mail and in person early this year, in excess of 1 million. And so if trying to figure out who else is left to come. I mean, I don't think it's a secret to say that the intensity of the statewide races has not been particularly great, and I would put that on the congressional races as well. And the absence of legislative contests as well has made it very hard to see. There are exceptions, of course, but generally statewide that has not been intense. It's been the ballot questions. As I joked yesterday, it's been more like the voters I've spoken to, like studying for not so much voting in the midterm, but studying for the midterm with the questions.
But I'm bummed.
And
So
do you make sure they got it right?
Do you campaign at all today, or you don't? Do you?
Well, I've been greeting people to the extent I run into them. If things are quiet through the afternoon, I make visits in polling locations. That's generally what I do. It's not the most important thing is the election. The election runs well, not simply officially, but politically, obviously. And so I had to make sure that everything was up and open. And it's kind of the first hours of the day are the most critical. It's kind of like an airplane. It takes off. Takeoff is a very critical time. So once we're up and operating, we're in better position, and we are. So we'll see how the day goes. As I said, I've been out. I did vote myself earlier in the day. I'd say it's steady, and the anecdotal reports I'm getting so far is it's steady, but it's not. I don't think there's the intensity that we have seen in the past, nor even what our friends in North and New Hampshire are dealing with.
Bill Galvin, you either were or are the head of the state secretaries around the country. I think you're the most senior, or at least.
I'm not now. I'm the senior Democrat now among those who have elections.
And you know that. How worried are you beyond our borders about election deniers winning Secretary of State
I'm very
seats?
worried. I'm not just worried about election deniers winning. That's the worst case. I'm worried about the intimidation factor that even people who want to do the right job. I was reading just the other day the incumbent Secretary of State in Nevada, who's a very good woman, a Republican, and worked very hard to make sure in 2020 that was fairly done. She was having a dispute. They were going to court on her on some crazy thing about opening ballots early. Just these people like her, Barbara. They're very legitimate people. I wouldn't agree with them on most issues, but the single thing I can absolutely agree with them is they're honest. Yeah. And that's the fear I have, that it's going to be, and the effect of it. I said this yesterday when I had my press conference. 2 years ago in 2020, no one talked about, before the presidential election, no one talked about, the election might be stolen. This is a complete work of fiction created by Donald Trump, but unfortunately it's permeated the landscape to such a point. We have, even here in Massachusetts, we have people who are vigilantes, who think they should go in and enforce the law. It's fiction fueled by the internet and just insanity. And that's why I actually hope people will vote, just to validate the fact that voting is a very important thing. And to the extent that we diminish its significance or suggest it's not legitimate, we're really undercutting the country.
Bill Galvin, can you take 15 seconds, give us your closing argument?
Well, my argument is that I think we have very critical issues coming up in terms of elections. Beyond elections, there are other issues, but elections clearly are the paramount issue right now. It looks like the 2024 presidential campaign is going to begin in about a week. And the reality is that all of the issues that we're confronting today and have listened to now for the last 2 years, it would have been impossible for anyone to believe 2 years ago that we would have actually had an effort to overthrow the government of the country and prevent a legitimately elected president from taking office. But we did. So the challenge is to make sure the elections are honest, transparent, and believable to voters. And that's my challenge, but it's also, I think, my ability based upon the experience that I've had and the experience I've had working with others around the country. Because, as you mentioned at the outset, I am the senior Democratic elected official in the country, and I intend to use that role to make sure that the rights of citizens throughout the country are protected and spoken for, because I think that's critically important. We are at a very critical time. Whatever happens as a result in the 2024 presidential election, clearly the impact in terms of the process is going to be significant.
Bill Galvin, we wish you luck. Thanks so much for your time today. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Secretary of State Bill Galvin. Running and the Democratic nominee. Joining us now is the Republican candidate for auditor, Anthony Amore. Hey, Anthony, how are you?
Hi, how are you both?
Great.
Fine, thank you very much for joining us, Anthony Amore. So tell us, what's your deal today? What are you doing? Where are you going?
I've been traveling around Winchester, where I live, frankly, and went to the polling place there and then greeted some people appropriate distance away from the polling place. And then later today, I'll be going around the state to see more people.
Yes.
So did the Republican Party ever agree to post your photograph for the most popular governor in America, or they're still holding out, Anthony?
I'm the one whose picture's not on the website, Jim.
Unbelievable.
So,
by the way, for the people who don't know the story, each of the Republican statewide candidates was asked by the party to submit a photograph. Anthony Mori had the audacity to submit a photograph taken with Governor Baker, who, as you know, has endorsed him, as mentioned on the show, and it was rejected for whatever reason it was rejected.
You know, Anthony Mori, I don't know if you heard Secretary of State Bill Galvin, he was kind of saying the turnout was rather low and expected to continue to be low during the day. And I think of people like you that are out there working their tail off here to get elected. I mean, it must sting a little bit that people don't come out as much as you hoped they would.
It does, and I listened to what Secretary Galvin said, and I echo a lot of his concerns about the effort among some to take away the confidence in our elections unjustly. And I worry that might have an impact on people's confidence in coming out to vote. I think people should trust the election process, especially here in Massachusetts. So, yeah, it is disappointing to hear about record low numbers.
Anthony Mori, give us 30 seconds of a closing argument to voters, if you will.
Sure. Well, thank you both. I would say to the listeners that I have spent over 30 years doing exactly the sort of work that the state auditor does. I even studied this work in graduate school at the Kennedy School. And on top of that, I've run really large organizations inside and outside of the government. But most importantly, I've been endorsed by all the major newspapers in Massachusetts, and Governor Baker, Governor Weld, Governor Swift, Governor Sununu. These people all say that I'm the ideal candidate for this job. I can do it on day one, and I ask voters to go in and say, who's the person with the experience to perform this job and to vote for me.
Anthony Mori, really appreciate your time. Good luck today. Thanks so much.
Thank you both.
You know, I should say, we're going to talk to the final candidate. We're speaking to State Senator Diana DiZoglio, who's running as the Democratic nominee for the same office auditor. Before we do it, we should say, in all the years Marjorie and I have been inviting every statewide candidate, this is for more than 2 decades on our show on primary and election day, we did a first today. The Republican nominee for Secretary of State we did not invite, again, as a first. And we talked about this a lot with our staff and our colleagues and decided we would not provide a forum for somebody whose campaign is built on a whole set of untruths. Let me be kind, I guess. And we are more than, I mean, obviously you vote for whoever you want to vote for, but we decided we wouldn't provide this important forum to her, but we will provide it to the Democratic nominee for auditor, State Senator Diana DiZoglio. Senator, it's great to talk to you. Welcome.
Hey, Jim. Great to be on today. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Our pleasure.
With everybody.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining us, Diana DiZoglio. So tell us, what's your strategy today? What are you doing?
Well, I just got done voting. I was down in Methuen, in my hometown, and speaking with voters and just thanking folks who came out to hold signs and, you know, just letting people know how grateful we've been to have their support through the last year and a half. It has been a long and hard-fought battle to get to this point. We have lifted up some really, really important issues to voters of the Commonwealth. And today we are out at the polls and greeting people still, and we're pushing through right till the end. It's not over yet. We've seen some polls out there, but the only poll that matters is the poll that comes in at 8 p.m. tonight. So we're working hard right through the finish line, Marjorie.
Are you a nervous kind of person on Election Day? You've obviously run quite a few times for office. You nervous?
You know, Jim, it's an interesting question. I haven't really had the time to think about being nervous, to give you an honest answer. It's been so busy, and we've just been going from one thing to the next that you don't really have time to think about it. I would say the feeling that I have today is not one of being nervous. It's actually one of gratitude. It is a really huge honor to even be able to run for elected office at a statewide level, to have had the conversations we've had with voters, to have heard their concerns and to be able to uplift those concerns. It is an honor to have been able to run up to this point. So obviously, I hope that we are successful at 8 p.m. tonight. I'm going to encourage everybody to get out there and vote. But, you know, I am grateful no matter what happens, you know, just for having been able to have this opportunity to run.
So, Senator, give people your closing argument. Why, if they have yet to vote, should they go into the voting booth today and vote for you?
Look, people need a fierce advocate for the things that they have concerns about right now. I'm somebody who was born to a 17-year-old single mother. I grew up housing insecure. mostly in the cities of Methuen and Lawrence, based on where my mom could find work as a young nurse's aide. I graduated from public school. I went off to our local community college, which was an associate's degree I was able to afford thanks to our state government's investments in families like mine. I then earned scholarships to Wellesley College to become the first in my family to graduate. I know what it's like to have to struggle and to have to be scrappy to make ends meet. And so many workers across the Commonwealth are facing challenges when it comes to just being able to access health care, being able to live with a standard of dignity in the communities that they're working hard to serve, and being able to afford housing in the communities that they're working in. I understand those challenges, and I want to make sure that we're guarding our tax dollars with everything we have, because every wasted dollar is another child's future opportunities that's put at risk. It's another person that goes without health care. It's another climate change initiative that's unrealized. It's another person that goes without housing. So we have a lot of work to do in state government, where we continue to be ranked by almost every good government group as the least transparent, least accessible state government in the entire nation. As auditor, I will have the authority to analyze and audit these state agencies and stand up and speak truth to power to make sure that your voices are heard loud and clear up on Beacon Hill. But I can't do that without you, so I do respectfully ask for your support to be our state's next Chief Accountability Officer, also known as State Auditor. And once again, my name is Diana DiZoglio, State Senator, running to be your next state auditor to ensure working families like ours have access to and accountability from our state leaders and agencies, regardless of our family backgrounds, our bank balance, or our zip code.
Diana DiZoglio, really appreciate your time. Good luck today.
Thank you so much, Jim and Marjorie. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Thank you very much, and good luck as well. That was State Senator Diana DiZoglio, and she is running as a Democratic candidate for auditor.
We should say a little bit later in the show, we're going to talk to John King. I can't believe he's making time for us today.
I know.
Probably the busiest workday of the year for him. And then we're going to end today's show in the 1 o'clock hour, taking your calls about your vote, why you voted, for whom you voted, why you voted, how you voted on the ballot questions. And again, I want to say it one more time. Polls are open in Massachusetts and Rhode Island till 8, in New Hampshire till 7. And I know we all urge you to go exercise that franchise.
Okay, coming up, we're going to change gears. Oh, we're going to talk with our two reporters from GBH, too, Adam Riley.
Oh, about in-state politics and Soraya Wintersmith,
yes,
of course.
At the, I don't know what time we're doing that.
12:30.
12:30, thank you, Jim.
You're welcome.
About local races here in Boston and around the Commonwealth. But up next, you know, a week ago we said Tom Brady was an over-the-hill dad, just divorced by a supermodel. And now... he's the GOAT. He's the GOAT again. He's a superstar. He's the king of the NFL. We're going to talk about the man with 9 lives. That would be, of course, former Boston Bruins, Patriots,
whoever
New England Patriots quarterback Tom Brady. Up next with Trenny Casey of NBC Sports Boston. You're listening to 89.7 GBH, Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming on youtube.com/GBH News.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Comcast Business, providing technology solutions for your starting or growing small business, including internet, phone, and Comcast Business Security Edge. Comcast Business, powering possibilities. Restrictions apply, actual speeds vary. And Cure Alzheimer's Fund, which supports foundational scientific research into the causes of Alzheimer's disease, because research is the only path to a cure. Learn more at curealz.org. And Legal Seafoods. You can visit their new location in Boston's Park Square at the Heritage on the Garden. Open for dine-in or takeout. Reservations at legalseafoods.com. If it isn't fresh, it isn't legal. And Newbury Court, a full-service residential community in Concord, Massachusetts, for persons 62 or over, committed to creating an active, independent lifestyle. More at newburycourt.org or 978-369-5155.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at YouTube.com/GBH. YouTube.com/GBH News. We're joined on Zoom by Trenny Casey, anchor and reporter for NBC Sports Boston. Ordinarily, when she's not here, it's because her dog just threw up. Is that what happened, Trenny?
She's actually pretty sick. She's been getting sick since like 10:30 at night, and we can't. Our vet doesn't open till noon. So
I should have shut
it's
up
like
right there.
it's like a 2-person job. Like I have to follow Sean out with like cleaning supplies in case she makes in the hallway again. I feel so bad for her. She
Well,
just,
wish
like,
your
can't
dog the
keep
best
anything
if
in.
you would on our behalf.
Thankfully, she's not vomiting. It's just poop, but I
That's great to
honestly
hear.
don't
Thanks
know
for
what's
sharing
worse.
that with us, by the way. Appreciate it.
Okay. Well, we hope she gets
You asked, Jim.
We hope
You
she
asked.
gets some
Really,
good
but
medication
okay.
at the vet and she's back in the swing really soon. So before we get to Tom Brady and his amazing game last week, let's talk about a couple of scandals that are going on in sports. First of all, this Bruins player that had a history of pretty bad bullying and hazing and
racism.
racial abuse got hired and then cut. What's the story?
I have no idea what the Bruins were thinking, you guys. So I'll kind of work backwards. Cam Neely spoke to the media yesterday about them signing Mitch Miller, to a two-way deal. So two-way deal is that his guaranteed salary was like $530,000, but he started in the AHL team in Providence. And they announced that they also rescinded it within 2.5 days. And their apology at the end of the statement was actually quite sincere. But the first part was baffling because they said that new information had arose that made them question the signing and decide to rescind it. But the problem is, guys, there was no new information. All Cam Neely and Don Sweeney and whoever is in charge of vetting players that they're going to sign and bring on to the Boston Bruins roster is, I don't know, Google. Because all of us who heard about this signing scratched our heads on Friday and said, wait a second, is this that kid who who was convicted, had a juvenile conviction for hazing, violating the Ohio State safe student laws, where the magistrate in the case said at the time, Mitchell Miller, so the backstory is this kid, Mitchell Miller, bullied and was racist and just abusive. I think abusive is probably the best way to describe the way Mitchell Miller treated this young man, Isaiah Myers Crothers. He was a young black man at the time. He is developmentally disabled.
Yeah.
And the story that gets like the most attention is that Mitchell Miller, and another classmate of his wiped a lollipop, a sucker, in a urinal and then had Isaiah lick it. And then they laughed. And so a lot of people were looking at the story and saying, okay, well, that's terrible and that's disgusting, but they're 14 years old and kids make mistakes. That was actually, when I just read just like the Cliff Notes version of the story, that was my reaction. Kids make mistakes, you learn. But then as you dig deeper, you find out that Mitch Miller was abusive and racist towards this child from like first grade until well after this incident that he got in trouble for. The magistrate in the juvenile case said afterwards he did not feel that Mitch Miller was actually remorseful. He just felt he was sorry that he got caught.
Well,
and
go
there
ahead.
was instance after instance after instance. And the real smoking gun to me is that the other child involved, the other teenager involved in middle school, personally apologized to young Isaiah and to his family for everything they did to him. Mitch Miller did not apologize until 1 week before signing with the Bruins, and he did it on Instagram. And all you have to do, you don't need to be a rocket scientist, you don't need to be a psychologist to know why he did that. He did it because he knew the Bruins wouldn't sign him unless he did this half-hearted apology to Isaiah and his family. It is disgusting. It is disgraceful. The Bruins should be ashamed of themselves for news dropping this on a Friday and then trying to cover it up and then rescinding it on a Patriots Sunday, like trying to basically get people to look the other way. And unfortunately, nothing will change with the Bruins at all because Cam Neely and Don Sweeney are the best of boys, and one is not going to punish the other.
And by the way, we should add one fact, is not only did this young player, Miller, not reach out to the family except on Instagram a week in advance to the kid, Cam Neely, I think it was yesterday, I don't remember what day when he did his little press thing, admitted the Bruins had never reached out to the family of the young boy to see how he was doing, what interaction there'd been with Miller. I mean, just totally irresponsible from beginning to end.
Jim, did you know that they talked to players like Patrice Bergeron asked them about the signing.
did.
And Patrice Bergeron said to Don Sweeney that basically he came out yesterday and said again that I told them I didn't want them to do this, and they did it anyway. And here's the thing, they don't really need this kid. It's not like he's some star defenseman who's going to change the entire complexion of the team. They put him on their minor league roster and was hoping that he was like a depth piece.
Yeah, but they shouldn't have signed him even if he was a star defenseman. I know your point. I get your point.
But yes, exactly. Like,
Trini, I just want to be
unconscionable.
I just want to be clear on one thing before we move on. That even after he was caught doing these gross and cruel things, he continued doing it past the 8th grade and on into high school. Wow.
According to Meyer Crothers' mother, he continued to abuse verbally. Sometimes there's a story about him punching him and getting into a fight with him at a high school football game. So this is not they keep trying to pass this off as an isolated incident. This is not an isolated incident. It's a pattern of behavior.
Now, let me tell you something. Our intention, Trenny, Marjorie and I carefully plotted out the discussion with you. We plan to discuss other scandals in sports, but I know Marjorie pretty well. I'm looking at her odd 20-year sexual attraction to Tom Brady is about to explode here because how he finished the game. Yeah. Here is Tom Brady. You may have heard of him, former Patriots quarterback, playing for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with 9 seconds to go, and they were 3 or 4 points behind the other team. Here it is.
Here's the snap to Brady. Fakes to Fournette. He throws. It's caught. It's in for the touchdown. Incredible. Tampa Bay takes it 60 yards.
By the way, you look like you'd look if Donald Trump went to jail tonight. I mean, it was one football game. Marjorie.
No, well, apparently there were several passes dropped before that Mr. Brady threw right into receivers' hands. So
on the previous drive, Marjorie, yes, they had like a little over a minute to try and come back and beat the Rams. And on that drive, I believe they turned it over on downs because I think they went for it on 4th down.
Okay.
And at one point, like he had a pass, I believe, to their tight end, like right in his chest and the numbers in his chest, and it bounced off of his hands. And you thought, oh boy, the Brady magic is really gone. But the Rams could not even get a first down so that they could run out the clock. And then Brady gets like 44 seconds, and he just does it's the first time in my estimation that Tom Brady has looked like Tom Brady this year. And look out, because that might light a fire under them, because the New Orleans Saints lost last night. Which I believe means that Tampa now has a 2-game lead in the AFC South, which is a garbage division in football, but it doesn't matter. A few years ago, the Carolina Panthers, I think in 2014, made it to the postseason with a losing record out of the AFC South because all you have to do is win your division. And so the Tampa Bay Buccaneers could very well still have a shot at the Super Bowl.
So I guess the reason I find this story so interesting is long before, the Giselle and the divorce and all these things, we were writing him off, oh, he doesn't have it. Oh, he didn't he threw 2 interceptions. Oh, he can't run anymore, whatever. He never ran that well anyway, I guess. But then he keeps defying not just people like me who don't really know much about the game, but people that like you that really do. So he's got it in him maybe to finish out the season. He shouldn't have retired last year. He shouldn't have retired the year before.
He retired for a week, Marjorie. Or 3 weeks, or whatever it was.
I mean, listen, I still don't think he's this. Listen, I don't ever count him out because it's Tom Brady. I don't know if he's got, there are some pretty good teams in the AFC this year that I think that it will be hard. Tampa is really beat up. They're beat up on their offensive line. They're beat up offensively. They're beat up defensively. I don't know that Tom Brady's going to ride off into the sunset with I guess it'd be his 8th Super Bowl. But he certainly can make it interesting, and he can make all of us wonder, will he play well enough that he feels okay walking away and then going to Fox and taking that massive 10-year, $375 million deal to be a broadcaster? Or will he play well enough where he's like, I can still do this. Maybe I'll go do it for another team. Maybe I'll go play in Miami, or maybe I'll go play in San Francisco, or maybe if the Patriots need a quarterback, I'll come back to New England. That's happen,
a lot of people wonder if he will be a good broadcaster because he's not exactly an electric personality. But boy, I saw Peyton and Eli Manning on ESPN talking about it.
I think they're great together, the
brothers.
My God. You don't think they're good?
No.
The Manning cast?
I thought it was
horrible. You don't like
horrible.
the Manning cast?
I do not. I thought it was
So, Marjorie,
horrible.
just so people understand the intensity of your feeling, if someone offered you can either have dinner with Tom Brady or with Secretariat. Which would you choose?
Secretariat.
Secretariat. I had a feeling that was the case.
Yeah, nothing like having dinner with a horse, I always say.
Yeah.
Casey, I always want to say Trenny Kuznarek. You're no longer Trenny Kuznarek,
No,
you're Trenny
that's
Casey.
okay.
Sorry.
Trenny Casey, can we, rather than returning to the scandals, there's some update on the Brittany Griner situation. American officials apparently have met with her face-to-face. What's going on there?
Yeah, they met with her face-to-face. They said that she's doing as well as possible, and they're still trying to negotiate a deal for her to return back to the United States. But she appealed. I don't know if we talked about this on the show. She appealed her original conviction, and it was denied. So as of right now, she got 7 years in a Russian prison. After that, the appeal was denied. Her family said it was the lowest they had ever seen her, that she didn't know what to do. But I think there's been some renewed hope with American officials going over there. But I mean, unfortunately, I just feel like she's just a pawn in this, what's turned into a spitting match between the United States and Russia trying to dig their heels in. It's not about what Brittany Griner did. It's about Russia making a point with American prisoners.
And, the way...
So they're going to have to give up something. They're going to have to exchange something. I think that's fairly valuable to Russia in order to get her home.
Apparently the United States has offered something pretty valuable, but apparently it's not enough.
Yeah, the descriptions, penal colony never sounds good, and that's how they describe where she is. It's not just a prison, but a penal colony. And she's in this very small cell, apparently. They have to have a special bed because she's 6'9", but it's this very small cell, 2 other cellmates, and she gets an hour a day to go out and walk around essentially in circles outside. It does not sound...
I can't even begin to imagine what it must be like. And the helpless feeling for your family, and to know that, either you really did nothing wrong, or even if you did, I know she admitted guilt, but I think she admitted guilt so that it would be favorably seen in the eyes of the Russians, with the hope that maybe if her sentence would be lessened, or she wouldn't get one at all, or they'd find a way to send her back. And it's just, and also I think on the long list of, issues that the United States needs to tackle, while it's an important one, there's so many fires to put out that I'm sure that the resources that probably need to be dedicated to this cannot be dedicated to it in the way that her family, and friends would like it to be.
I worry a lot. Margie and I talk about this a lot on the air, off the air, and I talk about it a lot on television, on the air. I worry that America's interest in standing by the people of Ukraine is on the wane, and particularly if you hear the Marjorie Taylor Greene saying, if the Republicans take the House, we can cut off all funding to Ukraine. If you have disengaged and want to re-engage, as you should, Frontline has done a series of documentaries in the last several weeks about Putin. The most recent one, I had the filmmaker on a week or so ago talking about the human rights violations that have been committed and documented in the most meticulous kind of way by Putin and his people. And it is so painful and so heartrending. It's just unbelievable. So you should maybe go to gbh.org and check out some of the Frontline stuff, because it really is important. We're talking to Trenny Casey, NBC Sports Boston.
So let's talk about the Brooklyn Nets. Supposedly they were going to hire a Boston coach, Ime Udoka, that got in trouble here at the Celtics for an inappropriate relationship with someone on the staff, and now maybe not?
So this all broke about maybe now, it's well over a week now. And the reports were from 2 very well-respected NBA writers, Sham Charania from The Athletic and Wojnarowski from ESPN, that Ime Udoka's hiring was imminent to the New Jersey Nets. No, Brooklyn Nets. I keep calling them New Jersey Nets because that's what they were like my entire life growing up. The Brooklyn Nets, after they fired Steve Nash, and everybody kind of scratched their head and said, hold on a second. The Celtics suspended this guy for something that he did for a year. So it has to be pretty serious if he's suspended for an entire year from the Boston Celtics. And they said it was imminent, 24 to 48 hours. Well, 24 hours passes, 48 hours passes, a weekend passes. Now we're well over a week into this, or about a week into this, and there's still nothing. And Mark Stein, who's also a pretty connected NBA reporter, reported yesterday that high-level sources have gotten in the ear of Joe Tsai, who is the owner of the Brooklyn Nets, and said, I'd advise you against hiring Ime Udoka. I don't think it's in your best interest. And the word has been they've continued to vet him. We don't know who it is. The thing that's so crazy, guys, to me about this Ime Udoka story is that we don't have any details. We still, if you think about it, how long ago he was training camp began, I believe, around September 18th or 20th, sometime in there. It was at the end of September. He was suspended by the Celtics just a few days before the start of training camp. And we knew it was for a consensual yet inappropriate relationship with somebody in the Celtics organization. Beyond that, and beyond a report from Shams Charania that says that he exchanged some harassing text messages with the woman involved, there is nothing. We know absolutely no details. But the other surprising thing to me, especially now that this is happening with the Nets, and I wonder if this is what's happening more behind the scenes, is the NBA hasn't gotten involved. You haven't heard a statement from Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA. There's been no independent investigation by the NBA into the suspension itself, which has also raised some eyebrows. Like, are they just overlooking this and allowing the Celtics to do it? And if they're allowing the Celtics to do it, why would they allow the Nets? Is this high-level source that's going to Joe Tsai, unnamed source, saying, I think it's in your best interest to not hire Ime Udoka? Is that the NBA sort of stepping in privately and quietly behind the scenes? This is one of the most interesting stories that I think most of us have ever covered in sports. Because if you think about it, if this was the NFL, we would be raking this league across the coals for not having an independent investigation, telling everyone what was going on. If that coach was going to go to another team, it wouldn't be like, well, he just should get another chance. We don't know what happened anyway. People would be irate. And in fairness, the NFL has earned that kind of scrutiny in a way the NBA hasn't quite yet. But the NBA is certainly getting there. Between this and the Kyrie Irving thing, it's had some pretty bad looks. The Phoenix Suns owner, that instance where he was suspended for racism, but he didn't have to sell the team, and he just ended up selling the team on his own. Like, there have been a lot of missteps lately from Adam Silver that are pretty questionable.
One last thing, we only have 30 seconds left. The thing that's been said so little is, while we don't know the details, we know that Udoka had a, quote, inappropriate relationship with a woman on the team. And if I hear consensual one more time, I'm going to scream. That's one. Two, what statement do you think the Brooklyn Nets are making to the women who work for that team that he was suspended for a year because of his behavior with women who were then doxxed after the fact? What statement does that make to the women who work for the Brooklyn Nets as to how much they don't value them? In any case,
Jim, I likened it to the Catholic Church. You just keep moving a predator around.
Well, Marjorie's favorite topic. Hey, Trenny Casey, good luck with the dog, and it's great to talk
Thanks,
to you.
guys.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
We've been speaking with Trenny Casey, anchor and reporter for NBC Sports. Coming up right after the news, comedian Jenny Slate, movie actor, the voice of Marcel the Shell, a Netflix and SNL star, and most important, Milton Girl. Jenny Slate is going to join us. She has a show at the Wilbur tonight, but she'll stop by the library first. She is next on Boston Public Radio.
You said before she wasn't an SNL star. You said she was an NFL star?
No, she's not an NFL.
I got so excited. I couldn't see straight, by the way.
I goofed up. Another thing. She's not an NFL, but an SNL star. Jenny Slate next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library.
It's not over yet. More smart conversation about community issues is up ahead with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan on Boston Public Radio. Right after a news update from NPR. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you And Delta Dental of Massachusetts. Good oral health is known to protect you from heart disease, depression, and more. You can discover the connection between oral and overall health at expressyourhealthma.org. With the control of the House and Senate hanging in the balance, PBS NewsHour's Judy Woodruff leads live coverage of the results as they come in. Watch Vote 2022, Election Night Special, tonight at 8 on GBH2.
Trusted. Local. News. This is 89.7 WGBH, WGBH HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. Boston's local NPR.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. It's Election Day in the United States, wrapping up the midterm voting season. Millions who waited until today are weighing in races that determine who will be in control of the U.S. Congress starting next year. Republicans are hoping to retake both chambers in the midterm, citing voter concerns about the economy and crime. NPR's Don Gagne reports a number of races in the Senate will be key for the GOP and the Democratic Party.
While Democrats now hold both chambers, Republicans appear poised to pick up the 5 House seats they need to gain the majority, thanks to new districts redrawn this year and historic trends by which the party that holds the White House traditionally loses seats in the midterms. The Senate is an even bigger battle. Democrats currently have control of the evenly divided chamber thanks to Vice President Kamala Harris's tie-breaking vote. Republicans need a net gain of 1 there. Extremely tight Senate races in Pennsylvania and Georgia are getting the most attention, as are contests in Nevada, Ohio, and Arizona, and in a small handful of other states. Don Gagne, NPR News.
In Texas, all eyes are on the gubernatorial race between incumbent Republican Greg Abbott and Democratic challenger Beto O'Rourke. The Texas newsroom's Sergio Martinez Beltran reports 5.5 million voters cast a ballot early, and more are expected to vote today.
The Texas gubernatorial race is expected to be one of the most competitive in recent history. Republican Governor Greg Abbott is seeking a 3rd term. He has made immigration and the economy cornerstones of his campaign. Meanwhile, former Democratic Congressman Beto O'Rourke has focused on gun safety and access to reproductive health care. The latest polls show O'Rourke trailing Abbott by double digits, but if O'Rourke were to win, he would become the first Democratic governor to be elected in Texas in 32 years. I'm Sergio Martinez Beltran in Austin.
A tropical storm is nearing the Bahamas and projected to strengthen into a Category 1 hurricane before it makes landfall tomorrow or Thursday in eastern Florida. At the National Hurricane Center, senior hurricane specialist Jack Bevan is tracking the storm named Nicole.
The storm is strengthening. Maximum sustained winds have increased to near 50 miles per hour. We are anticipating further strengthening as the storm goes along, and by the time it gets near the Bahamas and the Florida East Coast, it will be at or near hurricane intensity.
The storm's exact path is still uncertain. However, 34 counties along Florida's Atlantic coast are now under a state of emergency. Large portions of Florida are still recovering from damage Hurricane Ian inflicted in September. At last check on Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrial Average is up more than 500 points. It's NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro in Brookline this sunny Tuesday. Well, let's see, last day to cast your votes for the midterm elections with contested races on the ballot for statewide offices as well as local legislative seats and ballot questions as well. GBH News State House reporter Katie Lannon says everything is pointing right now to the Democrats retaining firm control of Massachusetts.
Ballotpedia, the election tracking website, consistently ranks us the least competitive state legislature for elections. So don't expect much change in that front. The Democrats will likely retain their supermajority status.
Many legislative races around the state have only one candidate on the ballot. Meanwhile, it remains to be seen if voter enthusiasm will carry over to in-person voting this election day. GBH News political reporter Adam Riley says one key factor could have an impact.
Might be driven down this year by the fact that the governor's race in particular has not been that competitive.
Many town clerks are predicting a turnout of about 40%, but Adam Riley tells us a 20 to 25% turnout across the state is also a possibility. Well, another very popular store is closing up shop. This time it's the Christmas Shop on Route 18 in Abington, known as the largest Christmas experience in New England. Its owners say they're retiring and closing for good Christmas Eve. Also closing is the adjoining swimming pool supply store, the Pool Place, also with the same owners. 52 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include CrowdStrike, whose cybersecurity platform is designed to protect organizations by monitoring trillions of cyber events to detect threats and prevent breaches before they happen. CrowdStrike, protection that powers you.
He is Jim Braude. I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live as we do every Tuesday and Friday, except this week it's Tuesday and Thursday, from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming on youtube.com/GBH News. Hello again, Jim.
Hello again, Marjorie. So, you may know our next guest as...
My name is Marcel, and I'm partially a shell, as you can see on my body, but I also have shoes and... a face.
Or from Parks and Rec.
Daddy, someone set a fire in your car because you took too long and I got bored. Money, please.
Oh, no, there's no money.
Oh, my bad. No problem.
Oh, okay.
That's fine. I'll just destroy this office.
Hey!
Money, please.
She is, of course, comedian, actor, author, and Milton native Jenny Slate. She'll be performing at the Wilbur tonight, but first she joins us here at the Boston Public Radio for what I am convinced will be an embarrassingly fawning interview. Jenny Slate, it is great to meet you. We're really thrilled. Thanks for being here.
It's so nice to be here. Thank you.
I know.
Just taking a break from the NFL.
Taking a break. Well, I always joke that I am the only tongue-tied person who's probably on the radio for 3 hours every day, and I'm still tongue-tied, so I try to improve every day. But in any case, I'm wondering, was it a conscious choice to do the show tonight at the Wilbur so you wouldn't have to worry about the election all day long? Was that avoidance?
I wish I could say that I have planned even one moment that has occurred in my career, but this was the available date, and so here I am. I don't know that I'll be. I mean, hopefully I can just provide some relief for people tonight, yeah.
Speaking of relief, so I'm sitting home last night and I say to myself, Jenny Slate, by the way, every time I've ever said your name my whole life, I've never said one name. Do people don't call you Jenny, you're Jenny Slate, correct?
I mean, like my husband?
I think he'd call you Jenny Slate, as I'm assuming.
I make him call me that.
I'm sitting at home watching CNN, and I'm saying I have two choices. I can watch the duplicitous J.D. Vance and the odious Donald Trump, or I can watch Marcel the Shell with shoes on, the movie, which I am embarrassed to say I never saw. It is spectacular. I mean, totally spectacular.
Thank you. I mean, I would hope that you would literally choose anything over watching Trump and J.D. Vance.
One of the things, I hope this doesn't upset you, but it is what it is. Because I knew the film was out there, and I can't believe I didn't see it because I've been obsessed with Marcel since, 2010? 2000?
Yeah, 2010.
Whatever it was.
Yeah.
So I saw that the gross revenues were like $6 million. By the way, when I Googled it, you know what came up first? I wrote it down. I Googled gross revenues and the name of the movie, and what came up first is Jenny Slate rich? And I now know your net worth.
Yeah, I don't even know it. Let's talk offline about this, Jim.
But it is so. Are you sick of? We're not going to ask you, so don't get nervous. Are you sick of people saying, "Oh, can you be Marcel just for a minute here?" Are you? Does that?
No, I'm not sick of it at all. I mean, I think the lucky thing about my career and why I'm probably not very rich is that, I'm fine, but I don't have a swimming pool, which I feel like that's a sign.
That is
sad.
Yeah, I lease a Subaru, but, I could probably lease something finer. Although I love a Subaru, would love to be the spokesperson if anyone's looking. But
Ernie Bach Jr. may be listening, actually. You might
That's right.
luck.
Love the billboards. What was the question, Jim?
I have no
Sorry.
idea. I really have no...
No, I'm not
are you
sick of people
being
asking me. No, not at all. I like what I do, and I do it because it entertains me, first and foremost, in a non-selfish way. So, no, I don't
So
mind it.
so in light of that fact, I had to do that as a prelude. Would you mind for the 10 millionth time telling the story of how that came about?
Sure, yeah. I was in a hotel room that I was sharing with, at the time, my ex-husband, who's Dean Fleischer Camp, who directed and co-wrote this film with me. And our friend Nick Paley is also the third writer, just to shout him out. But we were sharing a hotel room with, I think, like 4 other people, 4 men. And it was really squished and annoying. And I had enough to drink that it was time for me to perform my art, and I guess that came out, and I just started being like, you guys are really, really messy, and like a tiny voice, and that was it.
That's so much of Marcel's appeal. I mean, I'm sure you've heard that before. It's a little teeny tiny voice and the little shoes, and just the whole thing is so endearing. But I also rewatched last night your Netflix special.
Oh yeah.
And you, interspersed with scenes from your home life, beginning with little Jenny playing the violin. Little Jenny, with her trophies in her room from, you didn't call it debate class. What'd you call it?
It was speech team.
Speech team.
Yeah.
At Milton Academy.
Yes.
So tell people, I always ask people that go on to acting or fame, how this happened for you? Your local girl in Milton.
Yeah.
And then what happened?
That's a really nice question. I actually don't think people have asked me that.
They haven't?
I mean, sort of, but I don't. Not really, just like that. That's very nice. Although I would expect no less. I'm a huge fan of the show.
No,
you guys
we
are the
love
best.
that. It makes me very happy. Very happy. Mutual Admiration Society
Our family's obsessed with the show.
I know all about your family now. The grandmother, your mom and
Sure.
dad, how they met with some sandwiches or something like that.
That's right. My mom decided to tell that story and somehow did not get edited out. I can't believe. But yeah, I graduated from Milton. I went to Columbia University. I wanted to go to just to get a liberal arts degree. I got a degree in English and Comp Lit, and I always wanted to be an actor, but I thought that a conservatory might kind of scare it out of me. I am what I am. I'm very talkative and gregarious. I also think rather fragile and easily discouraged. So I went to Columbia. I did the improv group there. I just wanted to be kind of like a Madeline Kahn sort of actor, a good actor, but a skilled actor. Bernadette Peters, Carol Burnett.
Okay.
Those were the people that I loved and do love. And after I graduated, I couldn't understand how to become an actress. And, I'm not like a bikini lady. I didn't know how to it wasn't in my instinct to objectify myself in the way that it seemed like maybe you had to at the time. Or I didn't know what was going on. I had no connections. But my best friend, Gabe Liedman, he and I decided to become a comedy duo, and we got a spot to do stand-up for 30 seconds. We did 30 seconds of
30
comedy.
seconds?
Yep,
Where?
30 seconds.
Where?
At a club called Rafifi, which also was really the origin point for comedians like John Mulaney, Nick Kroll, Chelsea Peretti, Jesse Klein, Pete Holmes. We were all there. It was like a weird
What can
Sesame
you do
Street.
in 30 seconds?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing. I don't even remember what we did. I bet we just stood there. I honestly, but something happened, and that's kind of how my stand-up career started. And I'm trying to go so quickly. And then basically, I just always wanted to be an actor. I just stumbled into stand-up. I'm really chatty and I like people, so there's kind of like a friendly infinity loop in there,
Yeah.
And I like attention in a nice way, so it was good. And eventually, I got the idea to do a one-woman show. I asked the Upright Citizens Brigade if I could use their theater. I wasn't one of their students, but they allowed me to, and I did a stand-up show that took place, a one-woman show that took place at my funeral if I had died at the age of 26 as an eccentric millionaire, and I eulogized myself in a bunch of different characters, and luckily for me, the comedian John Mulaney, who was already working on SNL, sent the casting director to see it, and that's how I got my SNL audition. And weirdly at the same time the cosmos kind of opened for me, and I ended up getting an audition for the HBO show Bored to Death, And I was supposed to be like a cashier, and they ended up giving me a bigger part. And that's how my career started.
That answer was almost as long as your career,
No,
by the way.
that's great, though. Sorry.
What
I
happened?
see the
30
ticking clock,
seconds.
Jim. I
Okay,
don't
so
know.
John Mulaney, who we all know, I mean, my favorite bit of his is the thing about special victims.
Oh,
at Law and Order, special victims, where you spend 8 hours watching those.
You do that.
I admit, I'm ashamed to say, my youngest daughter and I have spent, they're those most gruesome shows
They're
ever.
gross,
Children, horrible. Children, I don't know why we watch them, but you get hooked in. You can watch them forever. And so apparently did John Mulaney.
Yeah, sure. And actually, one of my very first auditions that I ever got was for SVU, and I got bronchitis and couldn't do it. And it was to be a person dying in a drawer who later dies. And I didn't.
In a drawer?
Yep. And I wasn't able to make the audition, and I was like weeping with my bronchitis, being like, that was it. That was only one chance. I was so upset. And then years later, I was like coming back from an actual film job, and I was on a plane, and I was like, just like you, I guess I'll watch this, disgusting show that weirdly titillates me. And I turned it on, and it was the episode with the woman in the drawer. And I was like, wow, full circle.
Okay, so why would we, hold on. Why was she in the drawer?
Because she got taken and kept.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
taken and kept.
You know what those shows are like.
They're gruesome.
She didn't just end up there, folding her
They're
socks.
gruesome.
Yeah.
They're gruesome. But we always have the murder at the beginning, and then we have the finding out, and it's always the wrong person.
It's always
Then you
the
find
wrong-
the right person right before the end, and then they're tried and convicted. And it's a
You know what
beautiful
the key
show.
is?
Feels good.
Look in the drawer. You're fine.
Look in the drawer.
So, Jenny Slate, can we go back to something you said a minute ago about your evolution here?
Sure.
I happen to find, as an audience member, nothing more terrifying than watching people do improv. As
Yeah.
an audience member,
Yeah.
I can't imagine. Are you not terrorized when you were doing this as a kid? How do you deal with the anxiety? Or did you have anxiety about what if I'm not funny, and if I start unfunny, I'm never going to be able to? Do you know what I'm?
Oh, I do know.
So
I
how'd
mean,
you deal with that?
I know, I feel it now, but I think one of the markings of our precious young people is that they don't feel a lot of fear at all. They just, there are those of us that just really, really are compelled to be seen. And, I just wanted to show. I just wanted to show this instinct that I had. I never thought very much about it at all. I just sought it out, and it was also a way to make friends. I don't feel like I had the easiest time making friends in like middle school is a time that still hurts my feelings as a 40-year-old person. And
Never get over it. Never get over it.
no, and on the one hand, I like to joke that lucky for me, I have the one baby on earth who will never get her feelings hurt. I can't even think of it, but it's something that I work off of. And I don't know, I think I just wanted to perform.
We're talking with Jenny Slate, and you wrote...
And she's at the Wilbur tonight.
The
which
Wilbur
we'll talk
tonight,
about in a
yeah.
minute.
You've talked about being a mother, how you got
Yeah.
a 22-month-old, how that's changed you. Talk a little bit about that.
Oh man, it's changed me, I think, in all of the best ways. One of the nice things about having a baby is understanding in a sudden and shocking way that everybody was a baby, and having a sweet tenderness for all of us. And I think that's been really nice, but it's also made me a more thoughtful and less impulsive person, and made me think a lot about my own upbringing. And also I feel really bad for my parents about how it was really hard to handle in most of my teens and all of my 20s and half of my 30s. And
Yeah, but you have in the documentary part that was in the stand-up, the thing on Netflix.
Yeah.
You have this wonderful grandmother.
Yeah.
That just said you're the best. You're
Yeah.
terrific. I mean, she encouraged you no matter what you were doing.
Yes, my grandmother, Connie Gilson, she really is the nicest person anyone will ever meet. And I'm going to visit her after I get off the air with you guys. And yeah, that unconditional love, that encouragement forever.
Yeah.
I don't remember a time that my grandmother wasn't telling me in a substantial way, not just spoiling me with flattery that I didn't deserve, but paying attention to me. And talking with me and specifying me and boosting me, and that took no energy for her. It was enjoyable. These are the things that also build my own belief system in terms of interaction, and they're in my comedy. I think, although I might sometimes critique myself on stage, I try to do it,
just a little.
But I try to do it in a way that doesn't make you feel like I'm making you laugh at me, therefore making you kind of cruel. You know what I mean?
Well,
Yeah.
they're things we have in common, I think. You touch on the universal things, right?
I
and that's
hope.
what it seems like to me, anyway.
So
By
what
the
are
way,
you doing? We should say, what are you doing?
Just one quick thing before we get to,
Yeah.
there's a beautiful scene where you have a beautiful pink dress on with these incredible
yeah.
sleeves. Is that the grandmother that encouraged you, or the other grandmother?
They both did, but
They
that
both-
is Nana Connie's dress.
Oh my God, it's absolutely gorgeous.
I think it is too. It's the dress she wore to my mother's wedding.
Beautiful.
Well,
So
my
what-
dad was there, my parents' wedding. Yeah.
What's
Sorry.
the deal with tonight? And by the way, there are only a few tickets left. I just checked. TheWilbur.com. What are you doing tonight?
First of all, I heard it was sold out, so now I'm devastated.
Well, that was I checked this
You said
morning.
it
There were
on
4
the
tickets
air.
left this
4
morning when I
tickets
got to
left.
work. So maybe
4
they're gone.
You know, that's pretty good. 4 tickets.
I'd say so.
It's
Maybe they're
probably
gone.
just
I
the
don't know.
toilets. It's probably, that's what I have to tell myself.
It's a huge
They're probably-
theater. Huge theater.
What's tonight? Who knows?
your show. What do you-
It's my show. I do tend to be pretty improvisational. I'll have some bullet points. I intend to talk a lot about the birth of my daughter and describe that process.
Oh, I bet it was fun.
Yeah, you know. There's a blast in there.
Yeah.
A literal blast.
Yes, exactly.
Well, I have very good news for you, Jenny Slate.
Yeah,
When
yeah.
you go to Jenny Slate, what comes up immediately is November 9th, which is tomorrow.
I know,
Which
that's
would
the other thing.
suggest, because they can't get tickets to November 8th, which would be tonight at the Wilbur, that is very good news.
Also, I don't know who's running that website. It's not me.
Well, who would that be? Marcel? I mean, who is running the damn
Just
website?
one key at a time.
So you said you listen to our show, which is really nice to
do.
say. Do you still throw up when you listen to National Public Radio? Or
No,
You don't?
I crave it.
You do?
I crave it. Yeah, but when I was a little girl, because my older sister went to Shady Hill, which is in Cambridge.
We know very well.
You
yes.
know, and so we would have to drive from Milton to Cambridge to pick her up, and I have always gotten very car sick, and there was something about, like just sort of like sense memories. My mom would be listening to All Things Considered, and I would be very nauseous, and if I would hear it and I wasn't nauseous yet, I would remember like, oh, I guess it's time for me to be nauseous. But now I cherish it, and and I donate to NPR.
Thank you very much. Yeah. So we have a controversy that maybe you can settle. Our senator's coming after us, Jared Bowen. He was there the day I interviewed your husband. Tell us about his book and how he pronounces the famed writer about whom his book is written.
Sure. So my husband is Ben Shattuck. He wrote a beautiful book called 6 Walks. And it is one of the New Yorker's best book of 2022, by the way.
It's a great book, but who's it about?
It's about Henry David Thoreau.
Thorough.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what he said.
That's what
Apparently,
Jared
we've
does,
all
too.
been wrong.
Yeah.
That's the way to say it is thorough,
Thorough.
not Thoreau, which most of us have been saying forever and a day.
Yeah, I mean, there's other Americans that I feel like don't people say like Carnegie? And I always thought it was Carnegie.
Yep.
We're
Yep.
making mistakes all over the place.
I said biopic for years until Jim informed me that it was a biopic.
Yeah.
God, I really didn't know that.
Actually, she did, but she didn't want to embarrass you.
No, I
So,
didn't know.
one of the things that disappointed me about your husband's book, I wasn't on that day. Jared was sitting in.
Yeah.
Jared's buddy with your husband, I think, or some such thing. Whatever.
Sure.
And so I was listening to the thing, and I was troubled by the Thoreau thing on all their behalves. But he also talks about Mount Katahdin.
Yeah,
And I want you to know, do you know who else climbed Mount Katahdin, Jenny Slate?
I did.
No,
Oh.
who besides you and your husband?
I don't know, Jim.
That
did
would
you?
be me.
Okay.
Yes, I did. And when I did, I was at Camp Anabar. Do you know why they call it Camp Anabar?
No.
Rabino backwards. That's number one.
Okay.
And even more, which I cannot believe your husband did not mention in his book. Marjorie, you want to tell Jenny Slate what happened to me at Camp Anabar?
Well, rather tragically, I guess, Jim was most improved camper, but 2 years in a row.
Oh, wow.
That is really sad. The first year was okay, the most improved camper thing, but
Sure.
when you're most improved 2 years in a row,
That's devastating.
It's
Jim.
devastating,
Yeah,
exactly.
you were coming from a zero. It
From
seems
a
like.
zero,
Yeah.
exactly.
So Jenny, when you do stand-up comedy, you mentioned you have bullet points.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's going to be part of the nerve-wracking, because it's mostly from memory, right? You know what you're gonna. You've got the bullet points. Where do you put the bullet points? Somewhere where you can see them in case your brain freezes up midway through? Or?
I do. I have. It's kind of like the entire thing. It's as if I've bought a complicated machine that I hardly know how to work. But sometimes I usually I feel like it goes well. It's rare that it doesn't because I'm really chatty. It's much like what we're doing now,
Yeah.
hopefully, except for more explicit.
But you're also by yourself on a
I'm
stage
by
in front of
myself.
hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people.
Yeah, it's kind of like. It's like a, well, you asked for it sort of thing. I really want it, but it is really scary. And I've come to the point where it's like, I'm not going to isolate I'm not going to get just what I want or whatever. It does scare me. I have a notebook. It is my security blanket.
Yeah.
I cannot be without it. I hardly ever look at it, but I put it when I they have a rider or whatever, what do you need? And I'm like, oh, well, I need chicken fingers in the dressing room. I need a strong IPA, and I need a flat stool for my notebook. And then a lot of it, the way I look at it, it's like going on a date. You know your best memories. You know the memories that you light up when, that they light up for you, and you light up when you're telling them. And you have to see the audience as a living thing and feel it out. What do they like? What don't they like? And I love that because it keeps me alive.
So you're almost talking about reacting in real time in kind of an improvisational way, like you talked about doing improv, that you react to what they seem to be enjoying.
Yeah. I think it's sort of like therapy in that, except they pay me, I guess. They don't get to talk. I talk, but they pay me.
But you said you'd pay them, did you not?
I did. I would. I really, really would. Because I really need it. And I need to, it's like I'm proving something to myself every time. And my worst shows tend to be not necessarily maybe people laugh, but they're my least satisfying ones. And usually what that is that I knew what I was going to say, and I just walked right, and I just said it, but there was no life in it.
Yeah.
What I like is making a path that appears before me right before I'm about to step. And I don't really tour heavily. I do need big breaks in between, but and that also makes it scary because you can get rusty.
So when you're local like this, do kids you knew at Milton Academy or family members, do any of your childhood friends come?
My parents live on Martha's Vineyard, so it's kind of harder for them now.
Yeah, that's true.
But one of my sisters is coming tonight. She lives in Natick.
That would terrify me too, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, my sister, that's cool, I feel like. But I have a couple friends from Milton coming tonight, and my husband will be there in the audience. And I like knowing he's there.
You mentioned this notebook. I saw, we had Gerard Carmichael on the show a few months ago, after he was on SNL, by the way. And I went to see him at the Wilbur. You didn't go. No, you didn't go. He did his whole thing. He's sitting down.
Yeah,
and he's doing his whole thing from a notebook.
Yeah.
Meeting, and I found it odd and at first off-putting, and then totally inviting and intimate and real. And it's sort of like a whole different shtick kind of thing,
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
I like it. I think one of the things that, I was like, well, I don't even understand what stand-up comedy is. My opinion of it before I did it was that I wouldn't do it because it seemed like a pretty masculine misogynist thing to me, and I wasn't really aware of it.
I don't know why you'd feel that way.
But I think we have this sense that stand-up can only look or be one way, and I think when you do that or in discussion about an art form that way, you obviously discourage a lot of promising artists. And so I do it my own way. I love how I do it. I enjoy my comedy, and I certainly enjoy Gerard's, and yeah.
He's unbelievable.
He's
Do you
incredible.
mind if we say what part of the world you live in? We won't say. Is that okay, or is that not okay?
I mean, yeah, sure.
Is that really okay? Because I should have been.
Maybe just the region.
Yeah, the
don't
region.
give my
That's all.
address.
No, exactly.
Southeastern
So you decide you settled. You and your
In
husband
South Coast.
in
South Coast.
Massachusetts.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Why? I mean, I think I read somewhere a couple of years ago you were living part-time in L.A., part-time back
beautiful.
here where you were. Why'd you decide to essentially put down, what's the expression, put down stakes?
Roots.
Whatever it
Put
is.
down
Why are you
roots.
living here?
It's so beautiful.
It is beautiful.
And I'm not I'm happier here. I like a quieter life. I lived in Brooklyn, then I lived in LA. I still have my house there, and we go there in the wintertime until our daughter will go to a school. But I just need a real life, and that's what felt real to me. And it's a beautiful place, and we're right near my in-laws. It feels good to be with the family.
Speaking of that, I know we talked about this before you came on the air. Your kid's how, 22 months?
22 months old.
Our lead producer, Jamie's kid, how old is Jamie's kid?
3 years old.
I want to know, we both have kids. Mine are 28 and 30. Yours are in their 30s.
Well, I have a granddaughter.
And you have a
forget.
granddaughter now. Well, that's actually going to be an issue.
That's right.
Jamie, maybe you could help solve a problem
Okay.
for us, because you think a lot about motherhood. I've read his son, at whatever, how old was it, Jamie, when this happened? 3 years, okay. His son, his favorite expression now is to call people an effing idiot.
Yeah.
And he's 3 years old.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for Jamie about how to...
Did you ask him if you could tell that story?
Can I tell the story? Okay, fine. He says fine. So, do you have any advice for Jamie about how he should deal with this?
I mean, his child is older than mine. I'm looking to Jamie for advice here. He's coming up with nothing.
Yeah, nothing. He's got nothing on this.
Yeah,
brother,
I mean,
nothing.
I say swears a lot. I don't mean, I'm not like trying to be tough, but sometimes they come out. It's part of my vernacular.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband, he heard that at this point in the baby's life, they're learning 10 words a day.
Right.
And every time I say the F word, he just says really silently under his breath, 10 words a day.
Yeah, it's always a problem when they go to their little
words a day.
preschool and they're saying those words to the teacher, which is, the teachers like that, I think, don't they?
Oh my gosh, they just love it. Yeah.
So Jenny Slate, we're extremely excited. By the way, real quick, because we're almost out of time,
Yeah.
but being on Saturday Night Live, that's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool.
Yeah. Did you have any good stories? Did you get lost going to the dressing room or coming out of the dressing room, or did you have a nervous breakdown before
Bump into
things
Tom
began?
Brady, anything like that?
No, one time I saw Leonardo DiCaprio
that's
hiding under the bleachers, and it basically broke my brain forever.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I was a big fan.
Yeah.
But
Do you look good under the bleachers?
yeah,
I
looks
bet he
great.
did.
You know,
Yeah, I
he's
bet he-
Leonardo DiCaprio.
Leonardo
He's
DiCaprio.
doing fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what he said to the person next to him? Jenny Slate.
Can you
That's right.
imagine?
So if you're a local kid now, which I didn't
Yeah.
even know, you'll come back?
Yeah,
will?
anytime. I'm a huge fan.
you're so-
Wow,
Huge
you
fan.
have made my day. Let me tell you that.
That
You
is
have made
huge.
my day. And
It's
you and
so
I are,
much fun.
You and I are Krista Tippett fans too.
Big time.
On Being, her podcast, even though her questions are too long.
They are long.
They are long.
I agree.
Next time you listen, they're very long. But other than that,
Yeah.
it's good.
I'm
Jenny
really
Slate,
into
we're
it.
thrilled to see you and meet you.
Hey,
Thanks so
thank
much
you.
for doing this.
Thank you so
Jenny
much.
Slate.
And thank you. Congratulations on your
Thank
great career and all your
Jim and
great work.
Marjorie. Wow,
We've
thank
been
you.
speaking
Wow,
with
for us,
comedian,
too.
actor, the voice of adorable little Marcel, and author Jenny Slate. She'll be performing tonight at the Wilbur Theater. We think it's almost sold out, but you can
we
try.
think it is actually sold out,
Actually
but check
sold
it out.
out. Well, anyway,
Just the
thewilbur.com.
bathrooms are free.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right. The tickets, if you want to try, are thewilbur.com. Jenny Slate, thank you so much for coming in. Absolutely great to meet
See
you
you,
and
Jenny
talking to
Slate.
you.
Such a
Coming
pleasure.
up, we're going to speak with GBH political reporters Adam Riley and Soraya Wintersmith about the statewide races and ballot questions on the ticket today, all around Boston and all around Massachusetts. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming on youtube.com/GBH News.
GBH News has been keeping you up to date with local and regional races and ballot questions, and now we're ready to bring you results. I'm nighttime news anchor Mary Blake. Join me for NPR's coverage of key national races, along with the entire GBH News team covering our local races and ballot questions, and how it all impacts you. Join us for election night coverage tonight at 8 on GBH 89.7, online at gbhnews.org.
Support for GBH comes from you. And City Year. Dedicated to helping students reach their full potential, City Year places AmeriCorps mentors in public school classrooms to support students academically and socially. You can learn more at cityyear.org. And Vanguard Renewables. The Massachusetts waste disposal ban has been expanded and affects many new food waste producers. You can learn more about compliance and how to repurpose your organic waste at foodwaste.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan at the Boston Public Library. Aren't you always nervous when you meet somebody famous who you admire the work of, that they're going to be a big a-hole? Aren't you always worried about that?
Probably not as worried as you are.
YM, and boy, she
was
as
great.
great as she is talented.
Yeah, she
Jenny
is
Slate.
usually talented. I mean, the Marcel little shell
Everything.
with shoes, I mean, is so endearing.
In any case, we're joined now by two other relatively well-known people in town, GBH political reporters Adam Riley and Soraya Wintersmith, neither of whom is an a-hole, by the way. I know them both. Adam and Soraya, it's great to have you here.
It's good to be
Well, that's a great introduction.
That's the biggest compliment I can
Not
pay.
an a-hole,
It's-
yes.
it's not an a-hole.
Okay.
Exactly.
Very low here.
Good to see you both.
So before we get to some of the races, I had been kind of stunned by this whole thing in the Boston City Council. I feel like I've gone back to, Boston of like 40 years ago with a fight about, Catholic parishes getting trashed. You guys can tell the story, but I'm going to play a little sound here from one of the Boston City Councilors, Frank Baker, who kind of shocked everybody in the City Council when he said during a hearing on redistricting last week that the new district maps are a deliberate attempt to break up Catholic parishes and discriminate against Catholics.
I got a call from a longtime friend this morning, happens to be a Catholic priest. He told me to keep saying my prayers, God grant me the serenity. And on a side note, he said that the clergy in Boston, they're all talking about this process right here. And they're viewing this exercise as an all-out assault on Catholic life in Boston. And it's not lost on them that the person that's leading the charge is a Protestant from Vermont.
By the way, this is about redistricting, if you didn't know. I haven't heard this until just now. Unbelievable.
Yeah, so what do you make of this,
Soraya, you covered this thing.
Right. The crazy thing about that is that we did obtain a copy of a letter from a priest in the Lower Mill section of Dorchester. That's right.
Yeah.
And it stopped short of referring to Councillor Breeden's religion, but it did say that the redistricting process does seem discriminatory against Catholics. I'm reluctant to repeat it because aside from that and Frank Baker, I haven't heard it anywhere else. But obviously that letter means that there is a sense somewhere else that some Catholic people were viewing the process as discriminatory.
Yeah, I found it so odd, especially when we're talking about Catholic parish life, because I'm a Catholic. Parish life is not what it was because so many Catholics don't even go to church anymore. The churches are closing. What do you make of it, Adam?
Well, we should probably emphasize that he was referring to Liz Braden, the city councilor for Alston Brighton, I believe. Am I getting that
That's
right,
right.
Soraya? Who is a woman who was born, raised Protestant in Northern Ireland.
That's right.
Has immigrated to Boston. I would actually urge people, you can go on YouTube and you can find that city council meeting from last week. You can find Frank Baker saying what he did. And you can watch what Liz Braden said in response. And it was really one of the more powerful speeches I can recall seeing in the Boston
Can
City
you give
Council.
us a 15-second summary?
I mean, it was essentially what you are saying is completely groundless and wildly offensive. I am trying to come up with a map for the Boston City Council that gives voters of color what they need to get under the Voting Rights Act. And what you're saying strikes me as contrary to Catholic values, but I wouldn't know because I'm not a Catholic. So I'll defer to my Catholic friends on whether I'm right
Did Baker
about that.
apologize?
He was made to apologize. So the council president did say you violated a rule, Rule 38, personal attack. So we can't continue until you apologize. And he did give a cursory sort of, I'm a good Catholic guy. I shouldn't be talking like that.
Well,
but immediately afterwards, when we did the story about the reaction to those comments, he just doubled down. He just said, I have to take care of my district. I feel like they're on the menu in this process, and so I'm going to do what I have to do and say what I need to say.
And I would say it was a consummate non-apology apology. As Soraya just mentioned, he said, I shouldn't have said those things. A nice Catholic boy like me shouldn't do that, which is just really repeating the attack in a different form.
I'm really sad that this has overshadowed the entire redistricting process in Boston because it's super consequential for people who really want to elect a representative, but here we are.
Glad you said that. Okay, let's go to state politics. So Adam Riley, I have asked every single person I can find, and now you're the next in line, to say, even if you're a big, not you, but even if you're a big-time Democrat and you're loving the fact that it appears that Democrats are going to win every constitutional office, maybe Anthony Amori, who's with us earlier, has a shot against DeZoglio for state auditor, that having all Democrats constitutional officers, virtually everybody in the legislature. Now there are only 3 Republicans in the Senate, 28, I think, Republicans out of 160 in the House. Is that not a problem for small d democracy? And of course, every answer runs along party lines. Is it not a problem for small d democracy?
I think it could be, and I agree with you that there's a lot of people, unenrolled voters, even Democrats as well as Republicans, who like the idea of multi-party democracy, the governor acting as a check on the Democrat-dominated legislature. Is why Republicans tend to have so much success winning the governorship. But the huge question, to my mind, that we're likely to come out of today with is, assuming that the polls are generally correct and that Jeff Deal doesn't shock the world, the big question is whether Maura Healey is going to be as much of a fan of Charlie Baker when she is governor as she apparently was on the campaign trail. I've never seen another case where you had a candidate from one party casting themselves as the natural spiritual successor to an outgoing office holder from another party. But that's what she did. She ran as Charlie Baker 2.0.
Well, I think we have an answer to that. If I can quote myself, why not? His favorite person. Well, we had this discussion yesterday with Jennifer Nassour, former chair of the state Republican Party, who was Jesse Mermel, big-time Democrat, ran for Congress. It is obvious that the reason the legislature came up with a cockamamie excuse to not include the Baker tax cuts, almost $1 billion in it, and then say, well, we're not sure about the finances of the state, is so that one of the first acts of Maura Healey as governor, should she be elected, is to do the $1 billion tax cuts that she's been trumpeting on the campaign trail. So I think we know the answer to the question. I don't mean this in a pejorative way at all. I mean it in an observational way. She is intending to govern a la Charlie Baker, and he did pretty well at that.
He did great at it, and if I were her, I'd want to govern the way he did because, as we saw throughout his tenure, about 70% of Massachusetts voters liked the job he did, even when things went wrong, things that he was responsible for. I'm not 100% convinced, unlike you, that they didn't get tax relief done in order to give Healey a victory. They're really good at not getting stuff done, so I'm still not convinced that's the reason, although it might be.
You know what I wonder, and we're speaking with GBH political reporters Adam Riley and Soraya Wintersmith, I'm really wondering, Soraya, if the Republican Party weren't in this weird place in Massachusetts where you have really far-right leadership in a small, Jim Lyons and the people that are very much Trumpsters in the Republican Party, Charlie Baker's obviously not, if you think he would have run again, if it weren't going to be this battle royale with other Republicans, if you'd be going for term number 3?
The first thing I'll say is that, to Jim's question about small d democracy possibly facing a problem, I thought that the response that Adam was going to give was where the Republican Party is right now. Like, to my mind, that's the deeper problem. And regarding Baker, I think I'm curious to see what he does, because I don't see how anybody with such high ratings and such great financial backing and such good advisors all around him, I don't see how he doesn't get on a ballot again. I'm new to Massachusetts and new to Boston, but I feel like I know politicians, and I feel like when someone's in a really great position like that, you can't just walk away from the pedestal.
But where could he walk to, do you think?
I think it would be up to him and his advisors to figure out the problem of how to get past a national primary that would lean towards extremist candidates. But who better than the nation's favorite governor to figure out how to bring the GOP back to the center?
Whoa, wait. The nation's favorite governor, because the only people who get to vote in the poll live in Massachusetts. I mean, I would say I have no idea what Charlie Baker's intentions are. Right. And by the way, he'll be with us in November and December as still the governor for Ask the Governor. The notion that a sane Republican could get even 10% in a Republican primary, to me, is unimaginibly absurd. Do you agree with that?
I don't think it would happen right now. I think that the
could,
hope might
down the road.
Could down the road. It seems to me like it's going to take longer to get to a point where that's imaginable than I would have thought a couple of years ago. I mean, the GOP is really going hard still in the Trumpist direction. I just want to kind of double back really briefly to Marjorie's question about Baker running again. What was her question? It was so long ago. Would he have run again for a third term if the GOP locally and nationally weren't as hardcore Trumpist as it is? I've kicked that around in my own brain a lot. I think he said it didn't have anything to do with the prospect of having to get by Jeff Deal in a primary, right? He said that wasn't the reason. But he had so much thrown at him, so much, stuff, I can't use the word I was going to use on air. I remember seeing protesters outside his house who had signs saying, Charlie Baker, this is during the COVID shutdown period, Charlie Baker works for the Chinese Communist Party, waterboard Charlie Baker. There's a lot of derangement out there, and it got up close and personal with him. There were actually protesters from across the political spectrum who made a beeline for his house. This is before Michelle Wu started getting that as mayor of Boston. And if I were him, I don't know, it'd be hard to sign up for another 4 years of that. That takes real toll.
Well, can I say the exact same words to you that I just said to Soraya? Are you kidding? I mean, wait a second.
He's got a wife that may have said enough already.
Excuse me. Okay, he had a horrible couple of demonstrations outside his house. There's no question about it. He is beloved. You may, whether you like his policies or not, 70-some% approval. Oh, yeah. And an occasional demonstration that your family has to deal with.
More than occasional. And they were pretty ugly and pretty intrusive.
Yeah, I don't have any inside information at all.
Same.
But I would assume that that is not, I don't know, maybe that's not what drove him from office.
Plus, what would coming home after, being in charge of telling the whole state, we have to be in quarantine. All right, we can come out. All right, you got to put masks on. All right, we got to go back. I think I would be stressed.
See, this is what Jim does not understand this because Jim loves it when people hate him and send him nasty emails and text messages. Most of us aren't like that. I'm under the table and he's reveling in it.
Yeah, I'm under the table.
Well, can I add one more thought to that? Because I didn't even know we were going to get into that topic. He has also served for 8 years with the most pliant Democratic Party. I mean, when you're a Republican governor in a state, what drives me nuts on this show is when someone comes on and trashes Baker, which is perfectly fine, by the way, and doesn't say the next sentence, which is, if the Democrats in the legislature don't like what the governor's doing, they have enough votes to override anything.
Yeah, they can do whatever they want.
Forget Charlie Baker. So why aren't you criticizing your fellow Democrats for their unwillingness to take him on? They have essentially carried him around in a sedan chair for 8 years. No, I'm serious. So the thing that governors of another party from the legislature, which happens in a bunch of states, governors have to suffer through for 4 or 8 years, he's had none of. Essentially, they have been, for most part, at his knee.
I agree with you. Every now and then he'll veto something like the Work and Family Mobility Act.
Or the undocumented driver thing, where they did override.
And then they'll override him, and then they kind of move on and do their thing.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the ballot questions. I was saying to Soraya before she came on that I think you guys did a great job.
You did a great job.
GBH and
really,
Soraya, both of them, putting these ballot questions together. Do you have any predictions?
No. I don't have any. I know better than that. Nope, not doing it. I think at last check, the Boston Globe was saying about question 3, which I had focused on, that folks were inclined to support it, I guess particularly for the public safety aspects of it, but no predictions here.
I'll predict that, and this isn't particularly bold because I'm just going on what the polls have indicated, but I'll predict that we keep the law that will let unauthorized immigrants get driver's licenses. We'll go ahead and keep that law, and that the fair share amendment or millionaire's tax will pass. Yeah, and those are to my mind, those are the biggies. The other two are sort of about where money goes in particular industries, and they're maybe of interest if you work in those industries. But I think 1 and 4 are the.
I don't know if someone said it on our show or I read it in the paper, so my apologies. One of you will fill me in. Someone recently talked about how little Charlie Baker got involved in the No on One campaign. He does not support question 1, even though a little known fact. Do you know who signed the petition to put question 1 on the ballot in our radio studio? That'd be Charlie Baker. And the reason, because he and I have known a long time, we both believe in direct democracy, and we both believe if people want to put something on the ballot, they're entitled to, and then you take a position. So he signed the question, not because he supported it. Are you surprised at him, Riley, that he's whenever asked, he says, I'm voting no, but he surely has not been as vocal, nor has he used the huge amount of political capital he has to oppose the question.
He hasn't been out there on that one. He also hasn't been out there on 4. He was very consistent in his opposition to the Work and Family Mobility Act, vetoed it, passed over his veto, and he would have been a huge asset. The Mass GOP sees this or saw this as a get out the vote tool for them. They thought it was a chance to win a big policy victory. If Baker had helped them with that, if they'd gotten together, they might have had a chance, but he didn't. He's being so careful. He's backing Anthony Amore. He's backing, unusually, I know you guys have talked with him about this on your airwaves, he's backing Thomas Hodgson, who isn't usually Baker's kind of Republican. Okay. But other than that, he's playing it
Sheriff
pretty
of Bristol County is close to Donald Trump. For
sort
those
of
who don't know.
Joe Arpaio.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, he's been very cruel in some people's estimation by treating people that are here that are undocumented, and cruel in the way he's run his jail, at least by some people's accounts. Is he going to win?
I wouldn't bet against him. I mean, the guy running against him, Paul Hero, the mayor of Attleboro, says that his internal polling shows it's a dead heat. I saw both of them campaigning a couple weekends ago, and I think they're both going really hard. So it could go either way, but it's worth mentioning, when I talked to Hodgson, the argument he makes, and he did when you go way back to when he first became sheriff, like 25 years ago, got rid of the weight room, took TVs out of prisoner cells. He's done other things along the way that, as you mentioned, Marjorie, they've led to lawsuits. People say it's cruel and unusual punishment, effectively. His argument is, when people are in my custody, I don't want them wasting their time getting jacked or watching TV. They have a chance to get a GED. They have a chance to learn skills that can help them get a job on the outside, and they won't want to come back to jail. That's the way he frames it.
And it's the only other incumbent Republican who's at some risk is D.A. Cruz in Plymouth, where Rasan Hall, who's on the show quite a few times.
To be determined what risk he's at. Yeah. He's survived for 20 years. Scandals.
Cruz has.
Even when one of his ADAs came out and ran against him in 2018 and said he's relying on criminals to book deals and, rat people out for crimes, it survived it. I think that Hall would tell you, even if he doesn't win, he's going to make a big impression. It certainly looks that way from preliminary votes. And the last time around, the person that was challenging Cruz got less than the blanks that voters filled out. In this case, I think Rasan Hall had like 40,000 votes, and those were all Democrats, and then Tim Cruz had like 28,000, so there were less Republicans that were energized to come out and support him. Hall's campaign is taking that as a sign that folks are energized to cast a ballot for him.
Well, he did a great job when the ACLU was doing the What a Difference a DA Makes, because I think there was so much misunderstanding, people not realizing a DA was elected, people not realizing racism in the system, people not realizing how much the DA decides who gets prosecuted for which crime and how much and all that kind of stuff. He was a very impressive guy, so I don't know how he's going to make out in this.
That's exactly the playbook that he's using as he's going around the county. I watched him and Marion just sit and take questions from folks after outlining. He calls it a policy discussion, but it's like a town hall situation, and very much like the What a Difference a DA campaign.
And he strikes me, my guess is, Soraya's covered this race, I haven't really, but I don't think, if he were to not win, I think we're still going to see a lot more of him. He's just a natural leader, a very charismatic guy.
He's young, too,
really
isn't he? What is he, like? Is he even 40? I don't know.
One of the sharpest dressers in public
Sharp
life.
dress, got the bow ties.
Deal. Takes a lot to be able to pull that
Hard
off.
to pull that off.
Before you go, I'm sorry to obsess on this topic, but it's where we started, and that's where we'll end, at least with me. Jeff Deal, we invited a bunch of Republicans and Democrats today. I would have said this before today, for what we always do on Election Day, call in for a 4-minute, final pitch. Deal accepted, and then his person called, said he's unavailable. And we've had him on a million times.
And it's always been very pleasant,
I
actually,
think so.
even though we are on
great.
different sides of the spectrum.
Why miss? You don't have 3 minutes, and we told him anytime between 11 and 2. But it's not just this. I think you spoke to this. There was a piece in the Globe, too. This has not been a full throttle kind of campaign. What is that attributable to?
Well, the strangest thing is that on all these issues, I've always had the sense, and I've heard you guys talk on air about how you think Deal, whatever you make of his politics, is both a pretty nice guy and a pretty bright guy. I think he knew what he would have needed to do to run a smart race. For example, he was on Greater Boston with you saying he didn't think the 2020 election was stolen. Then he reversed course.
That was then, right?
That was then, and things have changed. I think he knew what he needed to do to be competitive, and he just didn't do it. The question for me is, did he decide, I just want to cater to the true believers so that, if I don't win this, and I probably won't win this, I can get a good gig down the road? Or did he have other people like Jim Lyons, the state party chair, or Rick Green of 1A Auto Parts, who is Jeff Deal's employer and also this huge Republican benefactor? Did he have other people telling him, no, don't even talk to the quote-unquote fake news media, just leave him alone? And I don't know the answer there. But
by the way, in all fairness, he's come to every time we've invited him here, including a potential gubernatorial debate, except for today. He has been here. The thing that I found weird about it, which maybe is explained by you, and then I'll shut up about this topic, but I think it matters to have two parties in a state so that there's real small d democracy, is Don Baldock, who's a total, let me be kind, I mean, such a transparent flip-flopper. I mean, literally, he gets the nomination and he changes position on the election like the next day, and apparently has gotten away with it well enough that he's in a neck-and-neck race with Maggie Hassan to be in the U.S. Senate. The point I'm trying to make, and I'm not endorsing flip-flopping, believe me, but I'm saying flip-flopping unfortunately works. Jeff Deal could have become who he once was, which was not this at least publicly, this Trumpist. And I know he was the co-chair of the campaign, obviously, in 2016. And I just don't understand. And I think it'd be useful someday for us all to know, because I'll say for the 15th time, it is good for any democracy to have more than one party in control of everything.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw him on the campaign trail, he was complaining about his daughters being taught about institutional racism in school. Going hard on that, going hard on vax mandates, and his supporters think he's going to win. They think he's going to shock the world today.
Got it. You guys have done fabulous work, both of you. I meant to say it, but we haven't seen you much. No, you both have. You really, Soraya, Adam, you've done great work in this campaign.
Interesting
really
election.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming in. So how late are you guys going to be up tonight?
If the polls are right, then it should be a wrap pretty quickly.
Only like 3 hours earlier than my usual 10 p.m. time, so
okay.
Not too bad.
All right. Well,
Good
I
luck
hope the
tonight.
polls treat you well tonight, you guys. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks, guys.
We've been speaking with GBH political reporters Adam Riley and Soraya Wintersmith, and we thank them very, very much for their reporting and for coming in today to give us a preview of the election around the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Coming up, GBH Executive Arts Editor Jared Bowen joins us to discuss the legendary horse Flightline's masterful performance at the Breeders' Cup. You haven't heard of him? I hadn't either until a few days ago, but Jared's going to fill us in on that, as well as the arts and culture events in and around Boston. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming on youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, it's Election Day. We'll hear from voters across Massachusetts as they head to the polls. Plus, we'll learn more about the Department of Justice's internal investigation into the state's top federal prosecutor, Rachel Rollins. And the city of Cambridge is considering a ban on right turns at red lights. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH's All Things Considered.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And Newbury Court, a full-service residential community in Concord, Massachusetts, for persons 62 or over, committed to creating an active, independent lifestyle. More at newburycourt.org or 978-369-5155. And Delta Dental of Massachusetts. Good oral health is known to protect you from heart disease, depression, and more. You can discover the connection between oral and overall health at expressyourhealthma.org.
Trusted. Local. News. This is 89.7 WGBH. WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. Boston's local NPR.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan, live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Before we introduce our next guest, let's hear a little bit from a huge star performing over the weekend.
Flightline has gone right by Life is Good and comes into the final furlong with a 3-length lead. Life is Good trying to cling to second. Tava is third, down to the 16th pole. It is Flightline. It is spine-tingling, jaw-dropping, awe-inspiring, Secretariat-like Breeders' Cup Classic win.
That, of course, was Flightline winning the Breeders' Cup, as the announcer just said, in secretariat-like fashion. Joining us to discuss this and other star performances you can catch in and around Boston is GBH's executive arts editor. That would be Jared Bowen. Hey there, Jared.
Hey there.
Okay, well.
Yeah, she's all choked up about it.
Okay, here's the deal. What Marjorie wants to say is he's no secretariat because he's a coward. He quit after 6 races to go become a stud. I mean, that's her point.
I mean, anyone would welcome the opportunity, right? If you can make a lot of money to become a stud. But
exactly.
And the decision was made for him. But what an extraordinary story this is. Undefeated Secretary who?
Unlike Secretariat, which did not, which or who?
He.
Which, no, but what's the word used?
Who? I don't know.
Who retired, did not retire undefeated, unlike Flightline, who was 6-0, Marjorie.
Well, that's right, but he had a couple of injuries that caused him. But these people are making fun of me because I have an obsession with Secretariat, and they wanted to point out that there was another horse that could give Secretariat a run for his money, but not totally, right?
But it did take 50 years. So you had a nice long run.
That's right, a nice long run with Secretariat. I swallowed my water the wrong way.
You did.
She's very upset about this.
If we can have someone give something to Marjorie.
No, I'm fine. I'll recover in a second.
What's that thing called where they grab you around the...
Heimlich maneuver.
Heimlich maneuver.
Yeah.
Okay.
You ever have nightmares that you swallowed something at home and no one's there to give you the Heimlich maneuver?
Yes. But I think you can give yourself the Heimlich maneuver. Actually, I think you can do something. What is this part of your body
Lean
called?
over a bench.
Or something like that.
Mid-stomach.
Okay.
Yeah, you just...
this
you
is
know
going
what doesn't
fairly
work,
well
though?
so
You know what
far,
doesn't
I
work
think.
for the Heimlich maneuver?
No, what?
Peanut butter.
Peanut butter.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think most people are eating peanut butter if they're choking. Do you know what I mean?
Well, you never know.
Oh, you mean to get peanut butter out?
Correct.
Oh, to get it out.
Yes, you do not. You have to be very careful eating peanut butter, which I eat a lot of, because the Heimlich will not move on peanut butter. So if you're shoving that peanut butter and mushed banana down your throat, you've got to be careful that you chew it well before you swallow.
All right.
Words of the
Thank
wise,
you
Jim.
for that.
Words of the wise.
So Wakanda forever.
Yeah.
Obviously, everybody's been waiting. Obviously, without the great Chadwick Boseman. You were there last night?
There was a screening for press and critics last night.
Wow.
Yeah.
And?
Yeah, so it's really interesting, this film, because I think it takes a different tack. And my main criticism of these superhero movies for a long time now has been how they... my mic is... There we go. Is that better?
Just pull the thing. Yeah, there we go.
There you go.
It's filled with explosion after explosion. There's not much plot. There's not much nuance. But this is a very thoughtful film, I feel like, because obviously they had the monumental task of dealing with Black Panther without Chadwick Boseman as the Black Panther. And in the very first opening minutes, and don't worry, I won't give away very much, but in the very first few seconds, actually, it's acknowledged that King T'Challa has died and the nation is in mourning, and the repercussions for his mother, played by Angela Bassett, and his sister, played by Letitia Wright. And so as they get back on their feet and come together as a country on the world stage, because they're no longer this quiet country that nobody has ever colonized or really known about, suddenly they are on the world stage with this natural resource that draws the attention of member states of the UN, and then there's this underworld uprising that comes after them. But as this family and the country deal with this tension in the world and the tension within their own family, it really focuses on the female members of the family and the female warriors of Wakanda. So it becomes their story, and it's very layered and nuanced and not ripe with all of the explosions and destruction that I've talked about as problematic in so many other films.
What was the audio? I know it's a press screening, so obviously it's at a feet crowd. I'm sorry, but it is. You know what? And you're not supposed to show emotion. What kind of reaction was there in the room?
Well, it's a very small group, so there's no reaction.
Oh, okay.
Well, so the first...
What do you mean a very small group? How many people in the room?
I don't know. There's probably... I have no idea, actually.
Okay.
Because the lights went down and I didn't really look around.
Let's play some sound from the sequel to Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. Here it is.
We know what you whisper.
That's a pretty exciting 21 seconds, I should say.
Well,
Black
Panther was a huge, mega hit. So is this going to be at that level or what?
I think so, because I suspect that the reviews will be very good, and there is an attachment to this story for what Wakanda represents and what it brings to people in terms of this utopian vision of a country that has been so unaffected by the world in history in some regard. And then moving this forward as we consider our own place in the world and what's happening in politics and whatnot, and measuring that against what's happening with the fictional Wakanda. I will also mention it should do very well here in Boston because there is a huge scene set just a few blocks away on the Mass Ave Bridge. There's a big battle scene because in order to, again, I won't give too much of the plot, but it starts at MIT and then works its way into Boston by way of the Mass Ave Bridge.
Neat.
Yeah, we have a very, very iconic moment, I think.
So before we leave this, before they turn the lights off, the lights were on. Is that correct?
That's true.
So why are you hiding from us? How many people were in the room?
I'm terrible with count. It's probably maybe 50 people.
Okay, fine. That's all we need to know. So
by the way, I was in this new theater where the seats vibrated. It was at the Boston Common Theater. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that.
They vibrate?
Yeah.
Were they heated too?
They were not heated, but whenever there was a big movement, the seat would
These
vibrate.
are separate seats, right?
Separate
kind of
seats,
thing?
yeah.
Yeah, I
What
told
is
you this story.
the
When I
point
went to
of
see...
vibrating? I don't get it.
Oh,
Like a
it's
massage?
like a massage
chair.
chair.
No. It was so you could feel what's happening on the screen.
Oh, you mean
yeah.
at the big climatic moments in the movie?
So when there was a big crash on the Mass Ave Bridge, suddenly I was vibrating in my seat.
Well, you know what you're not old enough for? I don't think. With all due respect, I know I am. I don't know if you are, Marjorie. Smell-o-vision. Do you remember Have you ever heard of Smell-o-vision?
I did not know that.
You didn't? Well, that's good. There were a bunch of movies about 90 years ago when I was a kid, and essentially the smell that connected to whatever the scene was would be like blown into the theater.
Ooh.
I know it doesn't sound that exciting, but it was a thing for a period of time. That obviously really impressed both of you.
I'm very impressed. I'm very impressed.
I remember scratch and sniff stickers.
Well, it's the same
I
sort
remember
of
those.
thing.
Yeah.
Thank you for bailing me out. I
Okay.
appreciate it.
So, Mikhail Baryshnikov.
Who I thought was dead,
My
by the
God.
way.
Oh, no.
No, I did. I didn't even think he was alive.
No, he and Jessica Lange had a child together.
Oh, they did?
Yes.
Wow.
A love child. So, what's he doing?
He is starring in The Orchard, which is playing right now at the Emerson Paramount Center through November 13th. And I've talked about this group with you before, the Arlequin Players Theater of Needham, Massachusetts.
I remember very well.
A really, really great, what's described as a fringe theater company doing really small productions. In fact, the first time I went there, I thought I was walking into somebody's house because I went into this kind of nondescript building, had to walk upstairs, and truly thought I was walking into the wrong place. But then entered into this very small black box theater doing really, really experimental and innovative things, and they took that same mentality and applied it to the pandemic. And then that got them huge attention with their play, The State versus Natasha Benigna, where you would log on and see this live virtual experience. But it also caught the attention of people like Mikhail Baryshnikov. So flash forward, and they have now gone out on tour with this production of The Orchard, adapted from Chekhov's The Cherry Orchard. This played off-Broadway, and now it's on a tour launching here in Boston. And it is this essence, I guess I would describe it, with some of the actual play of The Cherry Orchard. But you walk into the theater and there's a scrim that comes down in the front of the stage. And so you're already watching this sort of filtered experience as you look through the scrim. And much of the set is blue, and there's just a rocking horse and a few park benches and all of these blue flowers. And there's a giant robot arm sitting in the middle of the stage. And as it starts to unfold, you're watching some of the things projected onto the scrim as if it's a computer monitor. You're seeing the actors, Mikhail Baryshnikov playing the servant Fears, and you're seeing some of the images of this robot too. So in tandem with the live performance, they're also doing a virtual performance, which I have not seen, so you can sign on and watch from home. But what I came away with is kind of this amalgamation of The Cherry Orchard. And are we watching something in real time? Is this fragmented memory from the future where there would be a robot? Or is it from one of the main characters' minds, like Reneskaya, who, quick lesson about The Cherry Orchard, she's a Russian aristocrat who is about to lose her home and estate, also the place where she lost her son, so there's lots of emotion coming to the fore. But what are we seeing here? I mean, to some degree it is confusing, possibly a little frustrating at times. I was drawn into the confusion trying to make sense of it, but a lot of it also does make sense because you're following the path of The Cherry Orchard.
Is he a decent actor?
He is, and he incorporates movement into this performance, which is extraordinary. There's one moment where the wind is just sweeping across and blowing, and he's blowing with it, and just the elegance of what he does with his body. Obviously, it's what made him such a star, and he continues it now.
But that's going to have been a huge coup for them to get Mikhail Baryshnikov to play in this production.
Well, it is a coup, but I love the organic way that it happened.
Yeah.
This small theater company does something extraordinary. Somebody of the artistic height of Mikhail Baryshnikov sees it and wants to participate and play with them. So did Jessica Hecht, who's a great Broadway actor and film and television actor. She saw the same thing, and she stars as Reneskaya in this piece. And this all came out of the pandemic. People just wanting to participate and do something that's interesting.
Where is this thing?
It's at Arts Emerson, the Paramount Center.
Until when?
Until November 13th.
Remember we were doing the event for Silent Spring Institute?
I was just going to say what you're going to say.
And there were two ballet dancers from the Boston Ballet who were walking down the hallway in front of us and walking up the stairs. And you saw people that inhabited their bodies just walking. They were just walking in a way that was so totally arresting and different. You know, most of us are slumping and we're slouching.
Not just walking. You and I are talking to them at the cocktail party.
Oh, yeah.
And even the way they're standing.
Yeah.
Just, and by the way, it wasn't put on. This is just how they carry themselves.
That's what, and
really
I do yoga
beautiful.
a lot, and every once in a while there'll be this guy that comes from the Boston Ballet who does yoga. I don't even know why he's bothering because he's in perfect, and you just look at the way he moves. I guess that's just from years and years and years at the bar. Is that what it is?
Well, I think it's muscle memory. In any profession, you do something long enough and it stays with you. For dancers, it just happens to be physical. So we get to experience it, enjoy it, and remark on it because it is so extraordinary. You always look down at their feet, too. Their feet are perfectly poised. I mean, everything about a dancer.
Everything. And just the way they carry themselves.
By the way, we have sound we should have shared from Open Studio. You know what that is, right?
That's my show.
Exactly. Igor Golyak, is how do you say his name? Okay, he's with Jared just a couple days ago talking about his perspective on the similarities between traditional theater and more unconventional methods he's adopted in the face of COVID. Here he is.
For me, conventional theater doesn't really exist. Like, theater either sparks something, be it virtual or live, in person, or it doesn't. It either comes together and makes people connect and makes people feel something and embraces something, or it doesn't.
You know, before we leave this, you mentioned there's a virtual component to this thing which you haven't seen yet. I mean, we said this to a bunch of people, I'm sure you have too. One of the few pluses, which is hard to say about a nightmare like the pandemic was and is to a less degree now, is that lots of performance places, by force of necessity, learn to perform and get their work to audiences in a different way that they'd been able, should they choose, to continue in this semi-post-pandemic era, which makes all their work much more accessible to people, particularly people who aren't loaded or aren't as mobile as others than before. I mean, that's happening in a lot of places, right?
It is, and it also suddenly, again, you're this Needham, Massachusetts theater company that now has an international audience.
That's a great point, of course.
You can log in from anywhere in the world, and
exciting.
they have this renown now.
So tell us what's going on at the McMullen, Museum of Art, which, by the way, is in the building that used to be the mansion of Bernard Cardinal Law when he lived up there.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they've redone it, and I've got to go in there. I've only driven by it. I've got to go in there and see it with all the glass on the side and everything. It's beautiful.
Well, especially, he was a big fan of your work. I know
was a
Cardinal
big fan.
Law was, so it'd really be fitting that
of
you
my
were to go
work.
there.
But Sean O'Malley, when he came to town after the departure of Cardinal Law, chose to live in a modest apartment in the South End instead of the manse at Boston College, which has now been acquired by Boston on the Hill. That is correct.
Yeah, having covered any number of press conferences there over the years.
Do you remember going there?
I do.
Oh, were you there the day he resigned?
No, that was the most frustrating
That was one of
thing.
your first things with Emily, wasn't it?
I covered that story from the moment the Globe broke it, the church sex abuse crisis, and then I think I had gone away. I think it was December when he resigned, and I had gone away on vacation. And wouldn't you know, the story that I had seen from the very beginning, and we spent a lot of time talking to a lot of people over the years and months. He resigned when I was in England or something. It was crazy.
In the manse, he gave the press conference right there in the manse. We were all there. But in any case, what's going on out there?
Yeah, so it has fabulous new life as this gorgeous museum. And there's a show right now dedicated to the photographer Arnie Jarmak. And I love this because he was a photographer working from 1977 to 1989 for the Chelsea Record.
That's great.
Yes.
And this was a time where he wasn't from Chelsea, but he moved there and became very ensconced in the community, very welcomed in the community. And he was there in this very turbulent time so that he could capture so much of what the community was going through. So in this photography show, which by the way, I think its inception is really interesting because Diana Larson, the curator here, went to an Open Studios event in Chelsea, saw his work, was really struck by it, and now the show has happened, which is very, very exciting. But he was there at a time when, first of all, I should back up and say that he was inspired by Matthew Brady and his Civil War photography, by Walker Evans and his Great Depression era photography. And also he talks about this tremendous empathy he carried from his mother, so that when he's moving forward photographing for the newspaper, he really gets people and the character of the community and how they're living and how they're being. So there's this great wall of what I would describe as Chelsea's elders, these great portrait shots of the community. He has great candids. There's one in particular that I loved of a group of women who are just seated at this table, and they're taking their seats, but you can tell that they would take no prisoners as well. He's also somebody who was on call to cover the fires in Chelsea, and there were a lot of them. And in fact, the fire department had issued an edict, if there's a fire, call him immediately so that he can come over and capture them. But this is also a time in which the community was wrestling with what had happened with the construction of the Tobin Bridge, and it divided the community in half.
Yeah.
And it erased an entire tax base. And then to compensate for the loss of that tax base, those big oil tank and gas tank farms started to spring up in the whole area. So he's covering what happened in Chelsea from the 1970s and 80s, and it's all on display in these great black and white photographs. And as I came away thinking,
thrilling. It really does.
yeah, not only is he making photographs adjacent to the headlines, but he really is the headliner for this portraiture. You can see the way he looks at people, that he carries that empathy that he talked about getting from his mother.
And I presume it's a gorgeous place inside.
It is. It's very beautiful.
Yeah,
They
I
spend a
bet it
lot
is.
of time bringing in a great architect and making it into a gorgeous museum.
So Ernie Bach Jr., not surprisingly, has an exhibit of guitars at the Bach Theater. Is that what it's called? I mean, it's Bach.
It's the Bach Center.
Bach
yeah.
Center. I'm sorry. So what's he got? And this is his personal collection.
Well,
right?
I have to say, so it's his personal collection, but I was actually there right before that show started for the introduction of the Folk American Roots Hall of Fame, which is this new mini museum that you'll find at the Wang Theater
It's like a permanent
at the
deal?
Bach Center. Yes.
Oh, I didn't
so
know that.
yeah, if you go up to the third floor, they have done a really extraordinary job, and part of that is because they have one of the curators who is involved with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, who's also involved with the Bruce Springsteen archives. So they assembled a team because Joe Spalding, CEO of the Bach Center, really wanted to, he is a huge music fan. This is why you see so many concerts at the Wang in addition to theatrical shows. But he wanted to have a place for the roots of music in this country. So he has started this small museum that you can go online and make an appointment to view, or if you're there to see a show, you can go up and see. But there's the first show that's on view now is all about the Boston story of music. And so you see everything from Pete Seeger's hat and banjo to material from Peter Wolf to Terry Lynn Carrington over at Berkeley, her Grammy nomination certificate. You see Keith Lockhart's. Remember that when he came out with that album, when he first came to town as conductor of the Boston Pops, and I think it was called Runnin' Wild, and you see his Converse sneakers from there. You see Leonard Bernstein's tuxedo and baton. So they have really been very comprehensive to tell stories in jazz, folk, hip-hop, rock, blues, bluegrass, and classical music, all in this exhibition.
So wait a second. How do you get into this? If you're not going to see a show?
If you're not going to see a show, just go online and you can make an appointment to tour the collection. So that's on the third floor. A floor above that, you'll see great photography, and on essentially the basement level of the Wang Center too is a whole other collection of really country music memorabilia.
I love that. That's
Remember,
great. I hadn't heard about it.
Years ago, we had Willie Nelson on the radio.
I do indeed.
And he had his guitar with him, and it was all decorated and engraved with different writings, and it was just absolutely this phenomenal guitar that he'd had for years and years and years.
And he's still playing. He's only 90, by the way, and is still going really, really strong.
I love him. Well, by the way, for some reason, of all the things that I saw, the thing that struck me most was an Elton John ticket stub from 1972. So 50 years ago, he played that venue. And you want to guess how much a ticket cost in 1972 to see Elton John?
$9.50.
Marjorie?
$18.
Nope. John is saying $3.50. John Parker.
John, yeah. John
$6.
$6.
Yep. In 1972.
You know what he said, by the way, there's a great, in 1972 at that concert, there's a very famous line from Elton John. You know what it is? I read it just yesterday. All I hope and pray is that in 50 years, I can play at Mr. Kraft's wedding. And it turns out, 50 years later, he calls him Mr. Kraft too, by the way, even though they're very close.
Did he really?
Yeah.
No, I'm joking. Everybody else seems to call him Mr. Kraft, and he did play at the wedding.
I saw that. Yeah.
By the way, I don't know what it is about tickets, but tickets really do it to me. I have no idea. I mean, you were moved by that. I have 2 tickets. You know what the 2 tickets are? One of which I think will mean nothing to you. I have tickets on my wall when I was a little boy to the 1964 World Series. The Phillies were supposed to play. They'd lost 11 of their last 12 games. I know nobody cares about that. You know what else I have a ticket to?
The Muhammad Ali
Ali
fight.
Frazier won in Madison Square Garden. That's a rip stub. I was a law student. I spent every penny I had and then some, and maybe the most thrilling night I've ever had in my whole life. It was unbelievable. So what are you doing on that show of yours, that open studio thing?
This week, this is the part where
remember.
Titus Kaffar, we're sitting down with the artist Titus Kaffar, who has a great exhibition at the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, and we talk about his process. We talked about it here. I'll quickly remind you, the Jerome Project, where he found a number of men, some 70 men, who had the same first and last name as his father, all who've been incarcerated, and he makes their portraits, frames them in gold, which is linked to an exhibition that Gardner has right now, but then applies tar commensurate with a level of a number of years of incarceration. And so we talk about that process, how it came to be, what it means to him, and I've not often can I find an artist who can be so introspective and talk about their process and their emotions and everything at the same time, and he does it all.
You know, talk about, too, because you have this great feature now that I can't find on the website, but I can find it on YouTube. Tell people how to find it. Is it Jared Bowen?
Well, you just go to Open Studio at GBH.YouTube, or just, Google Open Studio and YouTube and at GBH for the GBH News channel.
In other words, he has no idea. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but I'm excited that you mentioned this.
Yeah, because it's like...
So wait a second. So how do we find it?
Quick run-through of different events around town. I love it.
So how do we find this again?
So you just go to the YouTube, the WGBH News YouTube channel.
Okay, fine.
And you'll find our Arts This Week rundown.
Okay.
By the way, it's called GBH. I don't know if you're aware of it. We're not WGBH.
I get docked $20 every time I mention the W.
Well, sometimes the email still is WGBH, so is it...
All right, let's not get into this on the air. Okay, Marjorie. Jared Bowen, it's wonderful to see you as always.
I'm always confused by it, Jared. Is there a W or no W? I'm not sure. Okay, I guess there's not.
Bye-bye W. Bye-bye Secretariat. Bye-bye W.
Yeah, well, Secretariat is still doing fine. You know,
it was actually not doing that fine, to be perfectly honest.
But Flight Line was what, 8 lengths, 10 lengths, something like that?
Yeah, actually.
Between 8 and 10.
Yeah.
Okay, Secretariat, 31 lengths.
Okay.
You do win that
Flight Line undefeated. Secretariat lost 2 races.
Well, he had a toothache.
Okay, fine. Goodbye, Jared. Nice to see you.
It was difficult. He couldn't, the bridle, pulls in your teeth. You know what I mean?
It is.
It's
tough.
not easy.
Yeah.
That's right. You're
running like a tremendous machine.
That's
Even though it's tooth hurt that day. It was incredible.
Secretariat.
Okay, Marjorie.
Moving like a tremendous machine.
Thank you.
And by the way, Flight Line is the great-great-great-grandson, correct? Of Secretariat.
No, he is. We said this last week.
Yes.
He's in
An
the line
emailer
of
told
succession.
us. Yes, the texter told us. That's
Okay,
right.
let's see if we can keep this going till tomorrow.
Tingling,
Fine. Okay, thank you. We don't need to do that. Okay,
It's going to get us all through tonight.
Okay,
Goodbye,
that's
Jared.
right.
Nice to see you.
Okay, bye for
Yeah.
the third time.
The person that's going to get us through tonight, we hope, is CNN's John King, who's up next on GBH News. We want to say goodbye and thank you very much to GBH Executive Arts Editor Jared Bowen. Thank you very much. See Open Studio Friday nights at 8:30 right here on GBH Channel 2, and look for his little 5 things in a row. Does it have a name? We don't even know his name. Anyway, it's on the YouTube's channel associated with GBH, Jared Bowen.
We are really
He's the guy.
prepared
Okay,
for our
sorry.
work, all 3 of us.
Jared
It's
Bowen
beautiful.
is gone, but John King is next. CNN's Chief National Political Correspondent. You're listening to 89.7 GBH, Boston Public Radio, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library.
Join us for our next free virtual Ask the Expert event, Holidays Inspired by Julia Child. On Friday, November 11th at noon, we'll chat with Julia's longtime friend, author, and chef Jacques Pepin, and her great-nephew and biographer, Alex Prudhomme. They'll be answering your burning questions and sharing some of Julia's favorite cooking tips and fixes just in time for the holidays. Find out more and sign up online at gbh.org/events. Bon appetit!
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Syngenics, a precision medicine company using autoantibody biomarkers for early diagnostics, patient stratification, and response prediction. Learn more at Syngenics.com. And The Huntington. You can celebrate the legacy of playwright August Wilson and the grand reopening of the beautifully restored Huntington Theater with Joe Turner's Come and Gone, playing now through November 13th. Tickets at huntingtontheater.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. So there's this guy we both know who had really nothing to do, and we felt really bad. He's not working that hard today, so we figured we'd throw him a bone. He's CNN's chief national correspondent, John King. He is also the host of Inside Politics, which you can catch weekdays at noon. We figured we'd help you out, John King. It was pretty nice of us, wouldn't you say?
You want to start with the Celtics or the Red Sox?
Well,
thank you, by the way, for you to come on your busiest day of the year. You are one sweet man.
Well,
thank you for really doing it.
You can't disappoint the homies in Dorchester. I mean, he's a Dorchester boy. They'll be tuning in to listen to him, so he can't disappoint them.
Here for the homies, but also here for Jim and Marjorie, who, every time I run into somebody up in Boston, they ask me about doing the show. I say, this is my therapy, and I need therapy today.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because I was thinking about what to talk to you about, and I was going to start with exactly that. We've been around for a while. Elections, you wanted someone to win, you wanted someone to lose, you paid attention. If you were involved in politics like you are, like I was, at least, around the edges, I paid attention. But there's a real anxiety, and no matter which side you're on today, there's a real emotional investment in this day that's I think it's just been since Trump that it's been this extreme, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well, it's supposed to be a celebration, despite the fact that you're right. If you're a Democrat out there, you're biting your nails. If you're a Republican out there, you might be biting your nails. Like, what's going to happen today? Is my party, if you're the Democrats, going to keep power in Congress? Or if you're the Republicans, is my party going to seize power? And everyone's, entitled to the passion of the day. But we used to share the idea that this is what a great celebration and an example to the world of American democracy. The shared part is gone, sadly, for too many Americans, And so we have a question tonight, for example. Will there be people who claim victory tonight before the polls close?
Yeah.
So that is a recent phenomenon. Not that it's never happened in our history before, but that it's the potential for it. So, as you guys know, I say this every Tuesday when we talk. I'm a born optimist because of my life story. And so I hope that that's not the case, but you have to prepare. You have to prepare for every election night for the things I do. And one of the added preparations now is, number one, dealing with the skepticism that too many Americans have about the honesty of our election officials all around the country. They're good people. They're decent people. There'll be a couple of mistakes today. Guess what? I'll bet you everything I own that they're not anything on the scale of, going to tilt an election. They'll have to check a couple ballots or fix a machine or get somebody's login password done. Welcome to day, right? Welcome to daily life, right? Trying to log into your email. But having to deal with that skepticism and having to deal with the distrust is a sad part of the preparations now to do what should be a celebration of American democracy, no matter who wins. And I respect everybody's partisan feelings as I say that.
We're talking to John King from CNN, who obviously will be center stage tonight and probably well into tomorrow and beyond as people complete voting tonight. So, John, as we're watching you tonight and checking things online, what are the first signs we should be looking for that will give us some indication of how the House is going to go, how the Senate's going to go, or is in the latter case things going to be too much up in the air to really know?
It may be if Democrats are competitive, Jim. If we actually have district by, there's a national environment that favors the Republicans. The only way to beat that national environment is to do, sort of hand-to-hand, day-to-day, district by district combat. We will see evidence of that pretty early on. And you'll see it right there where you guys are in New England, in the sense that you have two competitive seats in New Hampshire. You have one in Connecticut. And then, and so just watch those seats, right? If the Democratic incumbents can hold on in New Hampshire, that probably means Maggie Hassan is doing well in the Senate race as well. If the reverse is true and the New Hampshire map is filling in red in those House districts and in the Senate race, that'll be your first early sign. Maine also has a competitive district, but you have the ranked choice voting there, so it might take a lot longer to count the vote. But you will see, for me, looking for early signs, it's going to be New Hampshire, Rhode Island's 2nd Congressional District, where you have a competitive Republican in a district that has been Democratic for more than 2 decades. Then you have one in Connecticut, and then you have a half dozen of them in New York. There's 10 competitive districts in New York. 7 of them are Democratic incumbents. There's 4 in Pennsylvania, all Democratic incumbents. There's 3 in Virginia, all Democratic incumbents. So we will know as we come down the Eastern Seaboard, starting when the New Hampshire results come in and come on down. We'll have a very good sense early on. Republicans only need to win a third of the competitive races, even fewer than that. So if you're starting to see the East Coast map of House District fill in red in what was blue when we woke up this morning, that'll be your first clue.
I know there was a sense that during the summertime and right after the Roe decision that the Democrats were in much better shape, and now that's changed and dissipated and the races are all tightening. But I think, and New Hampshire is a more conservative state than Massachusetts, but I've still been kind of stunned by Maggie Hassan and Don Bolduc, because Bolduc does seem much more extreme than the typical candidate up in New Hampshire. So what's your analysis of the closeness of that race?
Well, worth remembering, Maggie Hassan only won by 1,000 votes last time, 6 years ago. And so it's a very competitive state. You have a Republican incumbent governor, Chris Sununu, who looks like he's going to coast to re-election and who may have national ambitions. So even though he and Don Bolduc feuded during the primaries, Chris Sununu wanted somebody else. Don Bolduc called Chris Sununu a conspiracy theorist. They were fighting. And what is Chris Sununu doing now? He's putting all his eggs in the Don Bolduc basket because he wants a Republican senator and because he wants to be able to be a national Republican. And if you oppose a guy in your own party, that gets complicated. You've had Nikki Haley come up in recent days. So you have establishment Republicans rallying around a guy who has been an election denier, plain and simple, throughout the election campaign. And you see that in a number of states as we go through it. So that'll be one of the interesting dynamics is do a big number of election deniers win in a democratic election, in a free and fair election, do people who still deny the results of the last one win in this one? And then if they win, again, the optimist in me says maybe they'll say, oh, actually, it's not rigged. Everything's fine. Maybe a couple tweaks we need to make to adapt to technology or whatever, but everything's fine. Or do they carry those views on once they have power? That will be a question for Thursday, Friday, and next Tuesday when we know the actual results, but it's one of the things we watch tonight.
So one of the things we've learned from you is if Georgia, nobody gets 50%, there's a runoff and it doesn't happen until the first week of December, which means who controls the Senate may still be up in the air for another month. Pennsylvania, Arizona, New Mexico, the key races, now New Hampshire, I guess, is in that category too. Which of them, unless it's like a 10-vote difference, will we likely know the winner of tonight as opposed to states that, for example, are not going to be counting hundreds of thousands, if not millions of mail-in ballots until late tonight or tomorrow, John King?
I'm not sure we can answer that question, Jim, because it really does come down to how close they are. Look at the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. It was Saturday after Tuesday in 2020 when we called that for Joe Biden. It was Saturday. It took that many days to count enough of the mail-in ballots where we were felt safe to make a projection, and then they finished a couple days later, and that number held up. So if you have a Fetterman-Oz 50-50, if you have in Georgia Warnock-Walker, watch the Libertarian candidate that race. He may only get 2 or 3%, but if he gets 2 or 3%, that means neither of the incumbent Warnock or the challenger on the Republican side, Walker, if they're both below 50, then we're having this conversation until December 6th. There'll be a runoff in Georgia. Nevada is notoriously slow in counting votes. And you could have a very close election there. Arizona has a Senate race. They tend to count a little more quickly, but remember how close it was in 2020, and so you had to go a couple days there as well if they're really close. And then you will have, I hope we don't have a lot of the shenanigans of, say, remember 2020, different states count their ballots in different order. So you have states like Pennsylvania, like Wisconsin, like Michigan, that count their election day ballots first. We will see those results first. And Donald Trump pulled out ahead in Pennsylvania, in Michigan, and Wisconsin in 2020. He lost all 3 of those states when the count was done. But remember when he came out late on election night in 2020, he said, "Stop the count, I win." That's not how it works. It's not how it worked then, and it's not how it will work now. But I think that's one of the things we have to watch tonight. We will have red mirages and blue mirages. And I'm careful when we use those terms because all the votes are real. It's just states count in a different order. So sometimes what you see early on is just not contextual. Those are real votes cast by honest, good voters for whichever candidate. But again, Ohio was blue for a long time in 2020. Texas was blue for a long time. Missouri was blue for a long time early in the night in 2020. Joe Biden, of course, lost all those states. But we have to be careful and patient and trust the process.
I don't know how troubled I should be about it, but in Pennsylvania, which you just mentioned, the Oz-Fetterman race there, the Republican Party is pushing to disqualify thousands of these mail-in ballots. I guess there was a crush of people who had already mailed in their ballot. I guess they didn't put a date correctly on the outside of the envelope or something, flocking to voting places, long lines to vote in person. What is that about?
I was just talking to the veteran Republican. He says he's retired now because he's no fan of what his party is doing when it comes to these issues. But the veteran Republican election lawyer Ben Ginsburg, who worked for Bush back in Bush v. Gore, very accomplished, very steady Republican election lawyer. His view is that most of those ballots will be allowed in eventually, and there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with a local Republican saying, Jim didn't date his ballot. So can we set that aside? Let's not count it now. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's how the system's supposed to work, right? You can contest a ballot that is missing something. And then what's supposed to happen is people of goodwill, Democrats, Republicans, independents, come together and say, okay, that's a legal voter. That's the right address. They just forgot to put the date on the outside. Let's count it. That's an honest human mistake, but it's a legal voter. If you get inside and there's no date on the outside, and then the signature doesn't match on the inside, okay, then you set that ballot aside again, and you take it to a different process. So there are good-natured, well-intentioned ways to challenge ballots. There's absolutely nothing wrong with challenging a ballot. The question is, what's the system and the process to resolve that question? So what they've done in Philadelphia, you mentioned that example, is they've been very aggressive in saying we have, I think it was 3,600 as of this morning, and they're putting the names out there. So, so Jim can look at, oh, I forgot to date my ballot, and go down and fix it. Show the ID, date it, we're done. Right? So hopefully they resolve most of that. I do think, Marjorie, that will be a question Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. How many ballots are being challenged? Are we just challenging them on site and we're working it out, or are we in the courts? I think we have to be prepared for that. I hope there's minimal, because I'm assuming there will be minimal actual problems, but that's something else you have to prepare for doing this job now that you never had to worry about before.
John, I asked you a question not unlike this last week, but I'll ask it in a different way. We know election deniers are only election deniers when the opponent has more votes than they do. Is there any organized effort that you're aware of in the election denying, and I will say Republican community, because that's where it's happening, to do that if people come in a close or not even a close second? Is there an organized effort to tonight or tomorrow morning to say what Donald Trump elevated to an art form, that this election was stolen, it was rigged? Or is this pretty much a catch as catch can, individual candidate kind of thing?
I would be careful. I want to beware using the word organized, because that would mean that, a candidate in state A is coordinating or at least listening to the same people as a candidate in state B. Right, that's what I was asking. And so on. But do you have people out there like Steve Bannon saying just declare victory and say stop the count? Yes, you do. Do you have the same lawyers who tried to help Donald Trump steal an election in Arizona a couple weeks ago, talking to people in these other states, giving them advice? We know what their advice was in 2020. It was to steal an election, including to the degree that the John Eastman emails show that they were worried because they knew Donald Trump was not telling the truth when he signed documents that he sent into a court. And so are some of these people still out there? Yes. I would say around 11 o'clock or midnight tonight, that's when you need to have your eyes wide open. Watch Donald Trump. He's preparing to announce he's running for president again. And his thinking is you declare victory and then fight it out. So I would watch. Do we hear anything from Trump tonight? We know the states where that is possible to happen because of what happened in 2020. They happen to be very important this year. Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, to name just three. Watch those states, 11 o'clock midnight tonight, and we'll see if that dynamic plays out. I hope it doesn't. I hope people wait and respect the count until we get to the finish. But again, another thing you need to be prepared for that when I started in this business, you just was unfathomable.
You know, for those few people who don't know what John's talking about, last night, I guess in Ohio with J.D. Vance, the Republican nominee for the Senate, Trump announced that he's essentially announcing a week from today, correct, in Mar-a-Lago. So we will have a candidate, former President Trump. John, I want to say at the end what I said in the beginning, you were so generous with your time on what we both know is one of the most pressure-packed days of the year for you. We can't thank you enough for being with us. We really appreciate it. Good luck tonight.
I'm happy to be here. Just real quickly, Massachusetts is going to be one of the contrarian states, it looks like, right? The Maura-Healey election in Massachusetts and the Westmore election in Maryland, the Northeast Republican Party is fading and fading fast. We'll see if Alan Funk can win that House seat in Rhode Island. But those two elections where in parts of the country, if you nominate a Trumpy candidate statewide, you're going to pay the price for it.
John King, thank you. Be well.
Wow.
We'll be watching every minute.
You know bring back that bumper sticker from years ago. Remember that one? Don't blame
me.
Massachusetts. Don't blame Massachusetts. Yeah, it was
exactly.
that. Yes, thank you very much, John King.
Be well, John.
Good luck tonight.
Have a great day, guys. Thank you.
We've been speaking with CNN's chief national correspondent, John King. You're going to see him all evening. I think their coverage starts at 4 o'clock, so he's got a long day in front of the magic wall explaining who's voting what, where, when, and why, and all that. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We're going to be right back, and we're going to open up the lines to talk to you about this election day, 877-301-8970. You can call us or text us at that number, 877-301-8970.
Election day has arrived, and with more than 6,000 state lawmakers on the ballot across the country, voters will decide if power is shared or concentrated. We're talking trifectas, district lines, rural voters, and more as Americans cast their final midterm votes. I'm Melissa Harris Perry, and that's next time on The Takeaway from WNYC and PRX.
This afternoon at 2, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you and Delta Dental of Massachusetts. Good oral health is known to protect you from heart disease, depression, and more. You can discover the connection between oral and overall health at expressyourhealthma.org. And New England Recovery Center, providing inpatient addiction treatment in state-of-the-art facilities located in Westboro, Mass. Learn more at newenglandrecoverycenter.org or by calling 1-877-MY-REHAB.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Ian. The rest of the show is yours. The number to call or text, 877-301-8970. In the last 2.5 hours, we've spoken to most of the statewide candidates for office here in Massachusetts. We heard from Adam Riley and Soraya Wintersmith on the work they've been doing. CNN's John King, we just said goodbye to. Now I want to hear from you, some, I guess, unofficial BPR exit polling. Who'd you vote for locally? What ballot questions? Yes or no? What are you concerned about heading into tonight's races across the country? Are you going to be glued to either 89.7 on the radio or that magic wall of John King's tonight on CNN, rubbernecking the train wreck of our democracy? Or you opting for lighter fare, taking in something along the lines of, I don't know, Jenny's Slate at the Wilbur, HBO's White Lotus? How are you dealing, at least with the anxiety that I know that Marjorie and I are feeling on steroids? 877-301-8970. And by the way, to create even greater anxiety, John just mentioned an announcement that Donald Trump made last night. He was standing on a stage with Jim Jordan, one of my favorites, and J.D. Vance in Ohio. And here is, and by the way, the music, we should be very clear here, is not from us. Here it is.
I'm going to be making a very big announcement on Tuesday, November 15th at Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, Florida.
Okay, 877-301-8970. How'd that make you feel, Marjorie?
Well, apparently his advisors and some leadership in the Republican Party were trying to talk him out of announcing last night.
Right, on the stage in
Yeah,
Ohio.
that was his original plan. They talked him out of that. They said it would probably, the argument wasn't that it's going to hurt the Republicans. The argument was you're not going to get the news coverage you want if you do it the night before the election. So if you want to get a big splash, don't do it tonight. And apparently Trump was dissuaded. But it seems pretty clear he is going to run again. And I presume that's what his big announcement is about. I don't know, but we shall see. You know, a lot of people I know, I mentioned this to you before, are just they can't take it. They're zoning out. You know, they'll wake up tomorrow and find out whatever we know by tomorrow morning. Of course, we may not know a lot by tomorrow morning because there'll be so much the absentee ballots, the mail-in ballots, so much confusion about that, so many challenges and stuff. But I think a lot of people have kind of had it. It's this is what we do for a living, but I think if you didn't do it for a living, you might want to take a little news vacation about this time. You know what I mean?
So here's an interesting thing about question 1, the Fair Share Amendment. This texter says, I waited until after I lost the Powerball so that I could vote for the millionaire's tax. I think that's very strategic. I would have done the exact same thing. 877-301-8978. You can call about anything you want in electoral politics. Just do not ask us to explain question 3. Other than that, we're here for you, and we'd love to hear how you voted, why you voted, and how you're feeling about the prospects for Massachusetts, New England. And nationally, you know what's most interesting about what John King said, which was obvious, but I hadn't thought about. When I said to him, how we know which way this is all going, we're going to know from races 45 minutes to our north.
Yeah.
If it turns out that Don Bolduc comes from behind and beats Maggie Hassan, or comes really close after she was way ahead in the polls, or the 25-year-old former Trump employee who's the Republican nominee in Congress running against the
Carolyn
incumbent.
Levitt, I believe.
Right, Levitt, running
her
against
name is.
Pappas. If she pulls that out, that's a pretty significant indicator of the way America is going to go. Let's start in Taunton with Steve. Hey, Steve.
How's it going? I voted red all the way. I wouldn't vote for Democrat if it was John F. Kennedy, but that's the way it goes.
Why'd you do that, by the way? Because you want balance or because you like the Republicans?
No, I want balance in Massachusetts. There's just too many Democrats, to get, for my money. But you know what? People aren't voting for Republicans in this election. They're voting against Democrats. That's that's the story. And the thing is this, is that partisans like me will vote red. Partisans like your listeners out there will vote blue. So there's two things. It's going to be turnout, and it's going to be which side will the independents go to. And so far on both those issues, I think the Republicans lead and we'll have a good night.
I think you're right. And by the way, Steve, thanks for the call. One of the things Steve said, they're not voting for the Republican. That sort of bears out he's voting for Republicans. The point you make on the most important issue to voters, the economy and inflation, the Republicans have absolutely no plan. Yet people are overwhelmingly voting for Republicans if they care about those issues, which is evidence that they're voting against the Democrats. I think Steve makes a fine point.
Well, I think that it's not too easy for people to remember that when Donald Trump was the president, there was not inflation like this. Gas prices were not through the roof, and their 401ks were doing better if they're lucky enough to have a 401k. So I get why people blame Biden, even though there's not much you can do about it.
Well, even though inflation is a worldwide problem,
Exactly.
too, but that's not very satisfying to someone who can't afford to put gas in their car, as you just said.
No, it's not. Roger from New Hampshire. Oh, I'm dying to hear about what's going on up there, Roger. Do tell.
Hey, Roger.
Hey, well, the parking lot's full. I'm about to go vote in Stratham.
Great.
Straight Democratic ticket for the first time in 20 years.
Really? Why? Why?
Well, the Republicans have no solutions. General Bolduc is an election denier. Carolyn Levitt is a 25-year-old performance artist. And inflation will come and go, but choice, a woman's right to choose, is a decades-long battle.
Roger, you telling the truth about having voting straight Democratic for the first time in 20 years? Or you're just trying to make a point?
No, I worked for John Kasich in 20.
Former Ohio governor, ran for president. Yeah.
And that's interesting you say that because John Kasich was a pro-life guy. But I have heard friends of mine who are anti-abortion are not so anti-abortion that they want to ban abortion all across the country. So it's interesting how many.
I firmly believe in a woman's right to choose.
Yeah.
And the icing on the cake, and I've been a split-ticket voter forever, is the fact that my state representatives, if they're Republicans, they're going to be voting with their caucus, and their caucus is sprinkled with really crazy people.
Hey, Roger, we really appreciate your sharing your voting decision-making with us. Thank you very much for the call. Good luck. Good luck with your outcomes. 877-301-8097. These are two very interesting calls to start off the conversation here.
Kay from Townsend, thank you for calling.
Hi, Kay.
Hi. I've called a few times. I'm calling about the Senate race in New Hampshire between Bolduc and Hassan.
Yep.
I just wanted to point out to the voters of New Hampshire that earlier on in the campaign, Bolduc was extreme about abortion, no abortion for anyone for any reason, and that he was going to eliminate Social Security. And now, in the last few days, all he talks about is taxes and inflation, as if he's been advised, don't alienate seniors and women. And I'm hoping the voters of New Hampshire are alert enough to that, the fact that he's changed his whole story for the election.
You left one thing out. Didn't he go from election denier to Biden's the legitimate president overnight after he won the primary? Am I not right about that?
I don't know. I haven't paid enough attention to him to know that. I just know that it was all about abortion and Social Security for the last month, and then, boom, all of a sudden it's inflation and taxes.
Okay, thanks for calling. Good luck to you tonight, too. Appreciate it. 877-301-8970.
I'm holding out hope, and it's probably a futile hope, that that the Dobbs decision will bring a lot of women, particularly younger women, that may not have been inclined to rush to the polls, to get to the polls this time. I don't know that.
Well,
maybe.
except we do know, the one thing we do know that is disappointing on that front to you and others who feel like you is the flip we've discussed a lot on the show in suburban women who, as recently as August, preferred Democrats 27% more than they prefer them in October. And your explanation, which I think is wise, is that their concern about the right to choose, right to reproductive freedom, that was right in their mind after the Dobbs decision started to dissipate as their bills became more unaffordable. Is that not your
maybe.
take?
Although I also wonder whether when you answer pollsters' questions and they say, what's your primary issue? And people will say that abortion will be third. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to vote for someone who wants to take away your choice.
That's a good point.
It might be that you're more concerned about inflation, but you still would not vote for someone, especially when there are people that say no exceptions for rape or incest or life for the mother. I mean, my God.
Yeah, but having said that, getting back to that prior caller, most national candidates, meaning Senate, those kind of things, who were no exceptions in primaries, I can't give you a precise number.
They've changed their,
all of a sudden came up with exceptions they could support, whether they really mean that or not, as soon as they won the primary.
Exactly, but you do wonder what they would do if they get down to Washington, D.C. and you have a Republican House and a Republican Senate, and that's where they're headed. You wonder, and the pressure from some of the extreme right in the party is to be extremely anti-abortion. Brady in the car, thank you for calling.
Hey, Brady.
Hey, guys. Obsessive caller. So I live in New Hampshire, but I live in New Hampshire right now, and the only principle that Don Bolduc has held to for any appreciable amount of time is that he should be in the Senate.
Yeah.
And I am also, for the first time in my life, voting straight down the Democratic ticket.
Really?
When I lived in Vermont, I voted for Jeffords, I voted for Sanders, I voted for Leahy, like Republican, Democrat, and Independent. And I've been so nauseous with anxiety about our democracy and women's rights that I literally, last weekend, ripped an entire wall out of the outside of my house and a roof structure out. There's a 20-foot by 24-foot hole in my house, and that I'm going to replace because I need something to do with my energy.
Boy,
okay,
Brady.
Hold on for a second now, Brady. So you didn't knock this out in a fit of rage. You knocked it out.
I'd say you did.
So you could keep your hands busy with some intense physical activity, or what? What's the deal?
It's raw panic.
Raw panic.
Raw panic. I'd say that's intense anxiety. Brady, thank you for the call. You know, we have a text along the lines of what Brady just said.
I'm not getting mine, by the way, so you're in charge.
Okay, thanks. The one thing that Jesse Mermel, the Democrat, and Jennifer Nassour, former chair of the state Republican Party, agreed on yesterday on our show, that it was really bad form to do what Melissa from Cambridge writes about. Of course, we should not forget that a lot of Democratic money went into electing these far-right Republicans, like Baldock, by the way, in the primary with the notion they'd be easier to beat in the election. It was a bad strategy then, as it remains right now. And Baldock is a good example, by the way. They put in a lot of money because they thought he was a lot easier for Haston to beat than the more moderate Republican that the Republican infrastructure, including Governor Sununu, was supporting. And lo and behold, Baldock is within shouting distance of beating the Democratic incumbent. I would say...
And that's true in many places. The strategy's come back to bite them, I would
agree.
argue.
And would you agree? I mean, John King obviously is 4,000 times the expertise we have. I would argue that if shortly after 8 o'clock when the polls close in New Hampshire tonight, if Baldock is beating and beats Maggie Hassan, Mitch McConnell is the next leader of the Senate. Would you not say that's a fairly good shot?
Yes, I would say. Well, that's the early sign thing. New Hampshire's supposed to be the early warning sign, the canary in the coal mine, Jim.
Can I give you a little advice, by the way?
What?
Fixing your computer when there's 90 seconds left in the show
I guess,
is not that critical. You know what I mean? I mean, that's at least my small
Well, I love to read the text
position.
messages. We have time for a couple more calls.
We have look who's
Sean
on the phone.
in
One
Dedham.
of my big
Oh
fans,
my gosh.
Sean from Dedham. How are you,
Is
Sean?
this Sean, our guy from Dedham?
It
Are you
is.
the guy?
Yeah, how are you guys?
Hey.
Jimmy,
Yeah.
when do we stop seeing the Maggie Hassan commercials? I mean, has that stopped yet? I mean, unbelievable. Jesus, lady, give me a break here. Jimmy, by the way, Brady, that guy sounds
Sean,
like a real charmer, huh?
Yeah, what?
I'd like that Brady guy. I'd like to have that Brady guy come to a party at my house. Holy moly. He's got some coping issues. Brady, Jesus, take a chill pill, buddy. Come on.
Yeah?
Jimmy,
Yeah.
here's the thing about candidates.
Yeah, please.
Don't tell me how you're going to help me. Tell me how you're not going to hurt me. Hurt me means my wallet, my 401k. I have kids in college. I'd like to retire someday. This isn't just for this election. This is for down the line. Like we all work hard and want to have a better life. Stop taking money out of our pockets. Seriously. And forget about the pandemic's over. Stop with the pandemic stuff. Let's get forward. Stop looking backwards. Forget about Trump. Let's go forward and stop with the mask and all that. But let's go forward. Try to get ourselves going
Sean,
again.
who are you voting for
economically.
governor in Massachusetts today?
Well, that's between me and my voting booth, Jimmy. I don't talk to you about that. I don't talk to you about a lot of things, Jimmy. Marjorie, by the way, how are you doing, sweetheart?
I'm doing great, Sean. You know
Sweetheart.
what? When I see your name
Sweetheart.
come up on the screen, I say, there's my guy. There's Sean from Dedham.
Jimmy.
What,
Jimmy,
Sean?
you were doing the halftime show of the Bruins game the other day.
No, that was
You're
not.
on the Nesson.
That was not me. And I never worked at Nest, and I worked at NECN, and I haven't worked there for 10 years. Sean, okay?
You again?
No, goodbye, Sean. It's wonderful to talk to you, as always.
Thank you for calling. We've been talking to Sean for what, 15 years?
I would say for our whole radio career.
Our whole
give or
radio
take
career.
a
That's
couple
right.
Of,
We love that.
minutes.
He's a loyal guy.
Can I say one more time
What?
before we leave? Polls don't close till 8 o'clock.
They do not.
In New Hampshire or Massachusetts, they close at 7. No, I got it back. I got it wrong. Rhode Island and Massachusetts close at 8 o'clock. New Hampshire closes at 7 o'clock. Ton of time for people who are sitting on the fence to go out and vote. Please go do this. You have a bunch of hours left.
Okay.
And that includes you, by the way.
That's right. I'm going straight from here.
Are you
to
really,
my,
or not?
absolutely.
'Cause you're gonna
my
forget
polling-
if you don't.
No, I'm not going to forget.
Oh, you might.
But I know people. I'm friendly with the people there. They always like to say hello and all that kind of stuff.
Is that why you're going?
No, I mean I've voted there for like years and years and
Yeah.
years.
Okay, well,
and they
that's
know
nice
I'm on
to
the
hear.
radio.
Okay.
And they want to say hi. Okay.
Oh
Keep
my
up with us
gosh.
24/7 by way of our podcast. We thank you for people for listening. Thank you for people that came down to the Boston
Thank you
Public
all,
Library.
yes.
Tomorrow we're going to be joined by Michael Curry from the NAACP with his analysis of the election. Our security
Margie's
expert.
applauding for herself.
I am.
Go ahead.
I made it through another day, Jim. I know you're surprised. By national security
Me
expert
and thousands like me.
Juliet Kineff, she's going to be with us. She's going to do analysis of the election as well. NYU medical ethicist Art Kaplan is going to talk about people's blood pressure on the day after the election. The Boston Globe's TV critic Matthew Gilbert, who's got this contest going with the best TV
It's over.
shows. Yeah, we're going to talk about it though,
We
right?
are, yep.
About best TV shows for years on TV, of course. And UMass Amherst professor Justin Gross on the political rhetoric of this charge election. We want to thank our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aiden Conley, Mackenzie Farkas, Gia Orsino, Brendan Deedy, our engineer, John the Claw Parker, Jenny Bologna, our executive producer, our BPL team, Steve Baracci, Angelica Morocco, and Evelyn Brito. What's on TV?
Well, actually, you're on TV. Marjorie Egan, Jim Dow, who's the relatively new editorial page editor of the Globe, and State Senator Lydia Edwards are going to come talk about politics, state, national, and Donald Trump as well. And then for a little palate cleanser, we've been doing the 5-star restaurants in the Globe. Number 3 is Ostra, and the chef owner, Jamie Mamano, is going to join me to talk about a fabulous seafood restaurant.
Free meal for Jim.
Well, maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. I am Jim Browdy.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you have a great election night and hope you can tune in tomorrow. Bye.